What is up, YouTube? Tonight we are talking about balloons and educating you on all the history of balloon science, from its humble beginnings with the French in 19th of September in 1783, where these brothers over in France decided to make a paper balloon and, burn a fire underneath it to fill it with hot air. These Chinese lanterns were probably known about for a longer time before that, smaller balloons, but they wanted to build one that was big enough to actually lift, people. And they did that. And then ever since then, I don't know when the first hydrogen balloon was, but the first balloons that they started using hydrogen gas were a next step in the technology much later on.
Won't forget Gusmão though, right? Because there's also Bartolomeu Gusmão was the Brazilian priest, but he's Portuguese colonial priest, and he built an airship in the 1600s. And there's a number of other examples of airships that were built. Now this obviously is more of a an artistic rendering later, but
the Vimanas in India also claim that they built airships that used gases and stuff like this too. So
right, and then there's the Peruvian airships, which there's examples of Peruvian airships. If I type in ancient,
were these for travel or atmospheric research mostly? Do you know? Like to get high up or to get
for instance, like Bolivia, where the mountains and the Andes, where the mountains are really high, an airship's really practical to get from one place to the other, where it's really, really close, except that there's an ascent and a descent of thousands of feet between the two peaks, right? But the peaks are right next to each other. So, and people for a long time tried to doubt that there were airships, that the Peruvians had airships, but it's even into their culture to this day to have these flying squirrel suits, right? Have you seen the Bolivian or Peruvian?
I'm just thinking, would you want to find out what was up in the atmosphere, the original research, it seems like that doesn't exist until the 20s, which is bizarre to think that these people weren't trying to figure out what was up high, how high the atmosphere went,
I mean, what's also interesting is so places like in Bolivia, they have Sucre. Sucre is 13,000 foot elevation. So that's like base camp Mount Everest. And that's just their city. So if you think about it, they're so much higher up into the thinner air than we're used to being at any point. Also, that's something to consider.
Yeah, that makes it even harder to make hot air balloons, according to the physics, though, because you want a denser fluid. The denser the air is, and the colder the air is, the hotter. The faster your hot air balloon will rise.
Right. So it calls into question what kinds of materials are they using, which is really interesting because then that asks you about the Silk Road, right? And there's so many places where the Silk Road, in places that have been called the Silk Road, where there isn't a lot of foot traffic, and we can look and see where there's been foot traffic for thousands of years, but it looks like what it's been is there's actually been silk balloons. There's silk balloons in certain places as well, which are
before they had airplanes. The only way to get aerial photographs was with balloons. So a lot of photographers would pay good money to get a balloon to go up in a balloon, and so there was aerial surveying and also aerial reconnaissance.
Civil War balloons. Can you imagine being one of those? Can you imagine being one of those kids? So let's say you're like a 16, 17-year-old kid, and they're like, you got a special mission for you, and you think you're going to get a good promotion, and they put you in a freaking weather balloon experiment with these. I mean, they haul out these.
Well, it's a tether. You're tethered to the ground, but if that tether lets go, you're floating away to who knows where. And
so high up though, and cold, and you're not probably covering your ears, and it's just freezing, and you're supposed, and you're up in the sky looking, and what are you doing? You're looking.
They didn't have the ways to let air out too. If it was a gas balloon rather than hot air balloons would only stay up for so long, but a lot of these were gas filled balloons. They would react acids with
metal tanks. They would have these tanks.
If you put zinc pellets in hydrochloric acid, for example, it will make hydrogen gas. So they got
one tank of one gas and the other tank, and then they put them together to create the chemical reaction right in the balloon.
Yeah, we'll see.
Gas. I think you're forgetting about one thing though. Like you're talking about 13,000 feet, and if you look at the ionosphere and the magnetosphere and everything, whenever the mountains go up and you're at a higher elevation, that the magnetosphere actually goes over it. So is the air density really as thin as what it is whenever you're at a lower elevation, or is it adjusting?
I mean, all I know is when I was in Sucre, I would like
right?
feel like I was passing out. I would be like laughing.
That's a great,
I'd almost walk
a
across
great
the street.
question, and it leads to one of the interesting facts that the best place to watch to where the hot air balloons are every year is in a place called Albuquerque, New Mexico, where the winds of Mount Sandia actually create this perfect condition where the wind direction goes one way at a certain altitude and it goes the other way at a lower altitude. So the winds, blow like northeast at one altitude, and then the winds blow southwest at a different altitude. So if you want to change direction, all you have to do is drop ballast and raise your altitude, or drop your gas and lower your ballast, and then you'll drop your altitude, so you can go back. So that's what they do in the hot air balloon festival. So you look up hot air balloon.
They exposed us on. Remember the show Family Matters with Steve Urkel, and he got caught up in an air balloon, and he landed the air balloon right on the Wilson's front step, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I just figured out the physics of it. If you raise and lower, you can direct your where you're going at."
Dude, I miss her.
To a certain extent, but the air currents aren't like that all over the globe. Albuquerque's like a very special case, and it's a perfect condition, which is why they
have a hot air balloon here in Central Jersey around September time usually. And I had some friends who were planning on going flying there. We fly paramotors to fly around them. That's a lot of fun.
Here in Santa Cruz and Carmel, you can get air balloons pretty regularly as well.
So why are we talking about balloons?
Well, I mean, they're pretty practical, and realistically, it's the kind of technology that we should be using. I mean, it looks like other people are using this.
Well, this is the real reason we're talking about balloons. Let's be honest.
Is this a good time for my meme? Just really quickly. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure I got that done. Okay, I feel better now.
Also, if you
response to the U.S. balloon, Kim Kardashian and the U.S. have released their own spy balloon.
There you go. That looks dangerous. Placement.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it's Photoshop. But
Kanye's so pissed right now watching.
It is Photoshop, but it has to be.
Check out those antennas.
I'm sorry, Kanye. You're always welcome on the show. I know you're on Tim Pool, and hopefully we'll be on Tim Pool again soon. They name dropped us on the show the other night, so I got to get back in touch with those guys and get back.
Yeah, you do.
What did they name drop you for? Can I ask what research was it that they referenced?
Ian's a good friend of mine, man. Well, he knows Andreas, and we just the last time I was on there talking about the U.S. Navy patents and the whole Salpaze thing and some of the research that's been done into that. But yeah, it's just a bunch of the research, because we've been doing this quite a while and know a lot about the history of this stuff. Going back to balloon scientists like Luis Alvarez.
What year is Alvarez from?
Alvarez was born in 1911, and he was famous for being one of the balloon scientists on Project Mogul, which were these spy balloon trains that were being built and released in the 1940s.
Not involved with.
Have you heard of Auguste Piccard from the 1930s?
Well, he was also appointed to Project Blue Book to be a Project Blue Book scientist. I think he was a Jason Defense Advisory Group scientist, member of the Bohemian Club.
Oof.
And also he was the guy that, came out with the U.S. Air Force and said that the Roswell crash was a Project Mogul weather balloon train, and, helped the U.S. Air Force with that, cover story, because, the balloons that they were using on these balloon trains were actually, I think, rubber or latex balloons. So
He's also really he's Chilean, so they went to the
these-
Chilean source of the eruption. So there's an eruption in Atapuerca, and him and his brother, I think it was, or was his father, came up with the Alvarez hypothesis, which is the reason a lot of people believe that there was a eruption that led to dinosaurs going extinct, because the Alvarez hypothesis is that there's a layer of iridium that has somehow coated the world that must have come from some sort of an extraterrestrial location, because there's no other source of iridium.
Interesting.
Except for at volcanoes.
What's the tensile strength of this this DuPont film?
So this is Bopet. It's a DuPont film that was developed in the mid 1950s, and this is Mylar. So Mylar couldn't explain the material that was reported the Roswell crash, because it wasn't invented for until a decade or half a decade later. So the memory foil that was reported at Roswell, so they say it was the radar target from the weather balloons that they had, the Project Mogul weather balloons.
So that's a memory film. Does that have like any similarities to mercury? And
Well,
the
look up liquid crystal polymer when you have a second, also, because in relation to things like mercury or plastics like mercury, liquid crystal polymer is what they make Vectran out of, which is the shoe, the lunar gear or something shoe that they make. And this is bulletproof, but that's not saying much. Silk can be bulletproof. This is like particle proof, and what you can do is you can make this tube that inflates, right? So the idea is that if you made a spaceship that you shot up that was like a broom stick, and then it inflated into this giant room it would be made out of Vectran, liquid crystal polymer, that can expand.
Andreas, you have more experience in this with me. If you scroll down a little bit, you can see this hexagonal shape, and we all know like the hexagonal shape is like a great structure. They even do airdrops within the military, and this is an energy absorbing shape.
Bigelow was big on he was working on all these kinds of expandable space programs for NASA and stuff before they shut down in 2020.
The thing is, this material is so useful for so many things, and it's funny, like the way you do it is you make a shoe. Nike totally did it. Like you make Vectran shoes, and then you can have this material, and this material you could build a house out of it. You know what I mean? Like you can build a spaceship, you can build a Earth ship. It doesn't really a sea ship. Doesn't really matter. It's just that you can make this super thin, super expansive material.
How do you
that
spell
is so liquid crystal polymer, Vectran, Vectran. Type in that plus liquid crystal polymer, probably.
Looks like somebody branded it. Is it insulating?
It can be. So you can make different various liquid crystal polymers. Let me see if I can type in.
It's the second picture. That's the one I was looking up on Wikipedia.
Here, right here. Vectran is a manufactured fiber spun from a liquid crystal polymer created by a Celanese corporation and now manufactured by Cura. It is an aromatic polyester produced by the polycondensation of 4-hydroxybenzoic acid and 6-hydroxynaphthalene 2-carboxylic acid.
Look at that thermal stability on the second paragraph. And this is the hexagonal shape I was talking about. So that means it's very strong, and it's creating a lot of thermal insulation on it.
Yeah, I love this stuff. I don't really like Nike, but I like these shoes. You know what I mean? I want this material. It's way cooler than Kevlar. They're comparing it to Kevlar, but don't let that fool you, because Kevlar is more like a ceramic plastic, and kind of glassy. And whereas this is, it can be woven into silk, fine material. So you can imagine the Lord of the Rings armor or something. It would be made out of Vectran.
So this is interesting.
So let's relate this to the current events of this Chinese spy balloon, because the latest talk among the experts is saying that this thing could maneuver and change directions and do so the Chinese were saying, oh, this is just something that blew off course. But now they're saying that, well, this thing was equipped with the ability, some more complex abilities and stuff. And I talked a little bit about this on a couple streams in the past, and other people brought up this this technology and said, "Oh, these things have the ability to shift their altitude so they can catch these high-end streams, and that they're able to, ride these wind currents." I don't see any kind of fans or other stuff on this maneuverability, but there are technologies that you could apply
You
to
don't need
balloon.
fans. You definitely don't need. So this is the thing. Project Loon, if you're familiar with Google's Project Loon, and a lot of that information was made public. So China definitely has it, whether it's public or not. But you could get this information. Relies on exactly what you're
So
saying.
educate us on Project Loon.
So Google wanted to put and did put a bunch of balloons up, like a loony project, crazy project. What if we had these balloons everywhere that were able to communicate with each other? In fact, they could be communicating by measuring. They could be sending signal back and forth, creating an array mesh network. They could do all sorts of things. And as they travel, they can even lift and fall based on what chemicals are in there. We talked a bit about this project that I had worked on, solar balloons, back Ian and Ben. We worked on this idea of using ammonia NH3 balloons, which would, when the sun rises and sets, produce a chemical reaction ionizing the ammonia gas, which lifts the balloon. And so it goes to a certain level that follows a certain current. But you'd be able to actually control this. That's basically what Google was doing with these balloons. And if you go even weirder, it was the laser internet. Let me see if I can find.
How does that control it? How can you control the buoyancy of the balloon just based upon the sun coming out whenever you don't know exactly what's coming?
So you can, in the sense that you can actually have chemical tinting of the plastics, so it can control when it gets ionization, and you can just decide when you want it to lift and when you want it to fall. Basically, you have control over the altitude of the balloon, and then that allows you to follow certain wind currents. And because all the wind currents are measured by this huge mesh network, that it knows exactly where it can be carried. So pretty well, it can be drifted into a current and then taken to where it needs to go. It might take slightly longer than a plane, but again, it's a balloon that's up there for years at a time and just gets where it needs to go without any fuel.
And this is why I think like space probes would be similar to a balloon, which is, makes sense where they found all that balloon type, memory foil stuff. It could have been a part of a balloon, like some kind of alien space probe balloon.
So they're building these laser guided systems that they send internet by mesh network from one balloon to another, and it actually shoots a laser directly across from one balloon to the other balloon.
It's like Starlink,
but it's balloon link, and it's way
link. Well, that's how to get over the horizon and set up a OTH, communications grid. That's, again, if with direct laser link, a setup array like that, then it's uninterruptible. But it's still, if you got to go through atmosphere. But if these balloons are super high altitude balloons, you're getting above those stratosphere.
Yeah, these can be 30, 60,000 feet easily. And the material, again, we don't even know what some of these materials are made out of, because we just know Vectran's one of the examples of liquid crystal polymers. There's so many, there's thousands of them that we've worked with in labs that are more interesting.
They can basically, that's like a ballast control, a very, very lightweight ballast control switch. So the idea is, but with balloon technology, is you're just it's basically like lift versus drag, your overall volume of your craft. But it's basically a problem of lift versus weight. How much weight do you have, and how much lift do you have? And then, so your payload here in this case is this this satellite solar panel array. Sorry, it looks like a satellite. It looks like the ISS space station or something.
It's basically,
it really does. What was hanging off that?
It's a clone of a Cubesat, from what I could tell. I mean, granted, we've only seen from one angle, but a Cubesat is basically this. You've got an Android run system a lot of the time. It's got solar panels on all sides that can be extended. It's just a simple Cubesat. And these are really easy to manufacture. It's basically like a micro PC. They're usually solid state. You might have a Raspberry Pi, you might have another system, but the most interesting thing about the Cubesat is that you can have so many different sensors connected to it, like the Arduino microcontroller processing. And so it's able to pick up on where it is, what the weather's like, etc. And also, okay, so here's the thing I was thinking about. Flipper Zero, because we were talking to Matt here, and Matt's got one of these. So imagine what China's got. This is the cute Japanese version. Like, imagine the scary Chinese version of Flipper Zero. Flipper Zero is this thing that scans all the signals and records them. So like, let's say here, you got one right there. Let's pull up Matt's.
Oh, I got the add-on because I actually have
cool.
the dev board on it.
Wow, that's awesome. So imagine though, like if he was,
Nice.
if this was, imagine the evil like version of this, and it's in a balloon, and it flies over parking lots across Canada and America and stuff, and just records how to open people's car doors and people's houses and whatever smart signals it's got, it's able to connect to. So I mean, that's kind of another thing I imagine is coming. Is it's going to be used to record you've got all these Wi-Fi cameras and everything, and all these Wi-Fi access points. If it goes over the place, and
I heard rumors that when Google drives around with their cars and they have they have the camera that does the street view, because how do they get the street view pictures, right? There's a Google car, and I've seen them driving around, and if you see it driving around, there's a chances are you can go look up that street view and you'll be in the picture.
Absolutely.
And too, so they drive around, but I heard rumors that they also they find unsecure Wi-Fi networks, they find all that, and they keep track of it, and they log it all. And they probably have Flipper Zero or something like that already.
That's what I used to do as a kid. So growing up in Silicon Valley, I used to have chalk, and I would go around and I would mark people's walls when I was like a teenager, 12 to 10, 12, 13, 14, for Wi-Fi networks, because Wi-Fi was kind of new at the time. And you'd put an X on a wall that needed to be opened, and a circle on a wall that had an open network, and you'd put a line through a wall that you'd had or check mark rather, to remove part of the X if you'd found your way into some network, and you'd put it into one of the local BBS boards or forums to share. Then today, driving around Santa Cruz, I saw one of these. So Google has these guys. These are these cars that don't have steering wheels, and there's usually somebody like working on his laptop sitting in this thing as it's driving him around. And all it takes is going by somebody's house while somebody's logging in or logging out to record the handshake, right? Because the way all technology works is encryption is the Masonic secret.
Just like the people that hacked Facebook realized it was all based on these tokens that were exchanged, and
you basically just record the
I can do that.
Learn how to do it, and that's how you open someone's phone. Exactly.
Okay, but
I can do that on this with the Marauder software. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The Chinese said that this is just a weather balloon. If they wanted to infiltrate our systems, if they want to infiltrate America, they just use Tictoc.
Or hardwired security, like the bugs that are hardwired. All are Chinese manufacturing.
There's fax machines that if you copy something too many times, it sends it off to their masters.
Look up the Hike Vision.
I think the point is that weather balloons have always been the most.
All the Hike Vision security cameras are banned from hospitals, government facilities, everything, because they're made in China, and they were hardwired with a chip right on the motherboard of all the cameras, the IP cameras, all the NVRs, that has a call home function, that any network time it plug into a network, it tries to call home to China and link up with the Chinese network to send data about the security cameras and from all Hike Vision. And they're, as a result, they were banned in all hospitals and federal.
That was a big thing. So I had some friends who worked at Lockheed when the fires in California hit a couple years ago, and it was interesting because there'd been a big security breach, and the idea that the Chinese had been in the Bay Area and gone through Lockheed and all this stuff. And so what they said was that at the Lockheed building, that there was no fire, but that the building itself had burned, and it was scorched black, like in a square around the building, like it had burned from the inside out to completely destroy anything that was inside the building. So there was a lot of talk about, whoa, what did we get ourselves into? The Chinese have been so deeply entwined with us. And, that was during who was the president, right? Like somebody who wasn't really super Chinese friendly. And now we have a new, more Chinese allied president who's kind of, by telling Blinken not to go or not making these deals, what we're saying is we're not going to defend Taiwan. It's like a very clear, consequential path that we're allowing China to do their thing to Taiwan. We're essentially, we're being neutral in a moving train. So clearly we're at this point, right? This precipice where that became a question. Are we or are we not friends with that balloon today? Has
believe it's
Oceania
more
always been at
so-
war with Europa? You know.
I believe it's more so the script always flips whenever it comes to politics. Like you'll see something, and I base everything on the news media. Like you think it's going to be big and everything is going to be released 2 years later. That's when it happens, and the script always flips after that. So if we're looking at being friends with China, I think that like the UAPs are actually Department of Defense of the United States. And if we come into conflict, that's whenever it comes out, because no other country is addressing UAPs or anything else publicly except for the United States. And it's just a show of like strength.
Yay.
I feel like that with the fact this balloon path, like let's look at the path again. Hold on. So the balloon goes around Alaska by Japan. There's no way that this is going beyond Alaska through NORAD without the United States knowing about it. So at this point, we already know that China and the United States were allied at this point, and Biden was cool with it. Then it goes across Canada. We all know what Canada is doing. We all know Trudeau. Like, it's obviously that they're allied with China. They're not really defending Taiwan. And they sometimes say something, but that's about it.
This thing flew right over Bernie's house and took pictures of it.
Which
I
is
saw Bernie
more
on
to the
Google
point.
Maps from that balloon.
Dude.
Oh
Bernie,
my.
What were you wearing? God.
You're just gonna have to wait to see when they release it, I guess.
Wait for the leak, dude. It'll be on the.
It will be leaked. Bernie out in his polar bear suit, maybe. Good old Canadian winter. There's a lot of speculation that they probably had a Lidar mapping on this balloon. What do you think are the possibilities of that, Jeremy or Mark?
Well, there's a lot of interesting laser technologies that are out there, including laser.
I mean, you could do that from space. There's no need for that. There was a lot of antennas on it.
They can do laser guidance too. This is a patent.
Okay, so there's certain things you can't do from space. I want to point out if you use LiDAR. Well, no, you don't have to use my page. I was just going to say, if you use LiDAR from 60,000 feet, you can see underground. And so that would be the main reason you would want to be closer, is that you could use it for penetrating LiDAR.
Yeah. So lasers are also, you can have laser emitting diodes, which are very lightweight, and it's much less.
I think it could penetrate the canopy, but it can't penetrate underground.
What were they using for the?
I don't know enough about these systems though. I'm still like learning a little bit about them.
LiDAR can penetrate trees because it hits it a bunch of times. It'll get in between the leaves, but it can't penetrate ground.
So what they do is they have a system of about 12 usually different kinds of radio, 35.75 gigahertz radar payload system operating the 6U CubeSat for the Rain Cube design. This is kind of the basic way you would, you would do this, and then you'd be able.
That is not ground penetrating at those frequencies.
I'm super curious. Like it all depends on what you're looking for and what you're spying on. If you're just looking for the weather, then you're going to have a different set of sensors on it than if you're looking to look for underground military bases, and scan underground. Right. Scan the ground for underground stuff. Versus, if you're going to put, what kind of sensors am I going to put on this thing? If I'm, thinking of as a scientist, it's going to be different.
Those are like, those look like 80 megahertz antennas at the end. That would be for communicating and hopping off of the ionosphere. For those who have ham licenses.
Yeah. It's probably got some OTH
like
horizon.
A quarter wave 80 meter antenna.
It's probably beaming those signals. It's probably collecting data or intelligence.
I actually communicated with somebody on 20 meters from here to Australia once when the conditions were just good. And I talked to Israel as well on the same day. So we had the ionosphere charged up, and you can bounce signals off of the ionosphere and back. And that's probably how they were communicating with this thing, using either 20 or 80 megahertz.
Yeah,
do clouds disrupt that, or can they
data?
Help that?
No, the cloud, it'll go straight through the clouds, and when the sun burps, it charges up the ionosphere, and that becomes like a mirror for the signal. So you're able to communicate past the horizon. Sometimes you're able to communicate all the way around the world.
So this translates back into Tesla technology on wireless electricity through the ionosphere. So they're using that carrier wave
resonance
signal.
Not through, against the ionosphere, bounces it off.
Like on the barrier of it.
It acts as a mirror and bounces it off. You just have hops.
I think also it makes me really want to start digging into Montana more because, like, obviously there's some underground awesome base in Montana. Like, that's just
There's a lot of out in that area, like those northern states and stuff. There's a lot of missile silos, a lot of ICBM like launch sites because it's a good vantage point to go right over the North Pole to get to that to get to China or Russia. You know, it's a strategic position within the U.S. and elsewhere. And there's a lot of farmland and open space out there too, where you'll just be driving along these cornfields out there, and then like all of a sudden it's like,
there we go.
There's another missile silo.
Waste the
NSA builds the
atmosphere then?
largest data farm in Montana. There we go. So,
Oh boy.
So I mean, come on. I think that gives you that's like a
zettabytes of information.
truffle
That's a
pig.
target.
Send the truffle pig that direction. You know.
That's a target.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then it's no
What
longer,
types
and
of
again,
things
that's
could
more like the Echo Flipper than it is. And it doesn't need necessarily go underground per se, you know. Also, what you have to do is you just have to scan the balloon over. Hopefully, you pick up somebody who lives in the Pine Gap like towns, like data. You get into their phone, and there's something like that, and then from there they can get someone else who's on the ground to get in. Because there's so many things here. They have all these different things. They already have data centers here. The Chinese already have companies and apps and things already in the United States. So they just need to work with their tech. I mean, that's what it seems like.
Oh boy.
Well, another question is, it looked, or I heard something about there being like small, like little rocket boosters or something like that, or jet things on this, like so that it could alter its trajectory that way. Did you guys hear anything about that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Maneuverability for them. If I was going to engineer a balloon, I would not use a chemical-based propellant like that because it's weight. Weight, for example, is one, and you know, it takes the storage for compressed gas. I mean, it's like it's a lot of weight and stuff. So I was talking about this. Back room and get that cell.
It does. If it's a CubeSat, it does have a
Written
really
back
small fan on it. I don't think the fan's really pushing it that like
the
much.
plastic thing that might
Theoretically, there could be a small amount of push just from the fan, but also the fact that it's lifting and moving. Look at the path it followed. This isn't like a majorly off course path. It's following the natural course.
Yeah,
you know?
it looks like almost lacing in the atmosphere. Could they put elements in the atmosphere that help it travel along easier? Like,
I mean,
I said, if you can
probably-
easily build these things with these liquid crystal polymers and electric, you know, you run a current across it and it shrinks the size of the balloon so that it will make the balloon go up or down in altitude.
right.
So that's an advantage
That's true
there
too.
because there's different wind streams at different altitudes. This is exactly why Albuquerque is the choice spot for ballooning, because the wind directions are in opposites and it's right at a perfect height of like, you know, like 1,000 feet. So you just, you know, ride either side of that and you can go back and forth all day. It's real convenient, but yeah, you could ride these wind currents to a certain degree. But if I were going to do it, I would use like I would use Biefeld Brown effect, or these you know, where you just have a different current, a charge current, electrostatics, which electrostatic propulsion, especially in these wind currents where it's just a long range, slow kind of effect, it would be advantageous to build this kind of technology and not that hard. I mean, this is off the shelf technology.
And meanwhile, Facebook has these, right? Which these things can fly for 18 months at a time, and they're gliders. Once they launch them, then they just stay up, and they have Wi-Fi. They have basically all the same features as the balloon does, but they're cruising, and then they have several flight paths, and they're gliding on wind currents. So
is that a prop at the front?
Do you know
or
who
is
it
that
does have
the
a prop
expert
at the front.
glider?
It does have a prop at the front, but the prop is powered by the
ultralights, and if they want to rise, they can also ride thermals, just like Falcon, like birds do, to save energy, because birds can soar to
right. There's a great Disney movie. Have you ever seen The Boy from the Condors?
Also,
Yeah,
this is
glider
actually
let the ducks
Walt Disney made this movie, I believe, about LRH. But what this is the true story of a boy who got into gliders in California, and to pass your gliders test, you had to fly like 500 miles in a glider without an engine. So what they do is they tow you, and they tow with the truck up. He gets up into the sky.
I flew in one once. I
And
got
the
I got
only
towed
reason
up
this
in a glider and flew in one.
this
Yeah.
guy would have
Like
died
12,
because
20.
like he's going into the fog canyon, but eventually he sees a condor and he's like, oh man, they know what to do. So he just follows the condors as they follow the paths. And that way he doesn't crash into the cliff. And true story, flew 500 miles, survived it. And so it became like kind of at the time, it was a big deal.
Yeah,
There was
Larry
another
flying
movie by
gliders at
Disney that was
11
like this,
years
where
old.
he flew the geese home, and he
Fly
was on
away
like
home.
a,
Oh,
I don't know if that was a Disney movie, but that is also a pretty weird and important true story. And that involves the UN unseating bird preserves on islands in order to take over certain spots in order to create these. But this is what's part of this idea of techno-Gaianism. So techno-Gaianism is this idea that we can make the world technology all part of the same thing. So natural technology. And so if these things are flying on natural currents and eventually nature can produce the materials themselves, then it becomes part of nature and it's no longer super out there or weird anymore. The seeds are being deposited on the wind currents by these robo birds that we're creating, right? And that is part of nature at a certain level. So I mean, it's not necessarily evil to create these balloons, right? The thing is what they're being used for, per se, that kind of scares me.
When did they stop using balloons to launch satellites?
Oh, they still do it, actually. Cubesat balloon launch. I just
they
saw
have those
one.
mini nuclear powered.
Yeah,
balloons.
space startup aims to launch CubeSats on balloon lofted rockets. There's a bunch of companies. Leo Aerospace is one of the ones that's been doing it. Yeah, if I go back, I'll find there's more.
So what happens to the balloon after they launch it? Or they just launch it in a lower atmosphere that they have to have the thermal activity up on the gases inside the balloon to keep it up?
I think one of the things is that if you launch a balloon to a certain height and then you've got a pressurized chemical fuel, you can launch a rocket from the balloon to get it beyond the distance the balloon can't penetrate. And there's a number of different ways that they've worked on that. There's also this idea of electrostatic tethering, that you can produce enough electroionic lift at a certain atmosphere that then you could just use the energy in the ionosphere to propel yourself up once you're already up there. So, but you can launch CubeSats.
Graphene drones.
Graphene space elevator, or the graphene space tether, right? The idea of building a space tether is interesting because, and the term space, but just basically if you hit the ionosphere with a tether and it's grounded, the amount of energy produced from friction so much that it melts anything that we've ever thrown at it. Like NASA in 1998 put these like super cables that were bigger than redwood trees up and this giant cable, and it took like less than I think it was 1.8 seconds, and it started to glow so hot red white that it just boiled and snapped instantly. And so the amount of energy that you're storing, it's so much more than we've ever dealt with. It's all the energy that humanity's ever used in a second, basically all the time. And we need
but free energy doesn't exist.
It's just so dangerous also because like we haven't figured out how to capture just some of that. That's the other thing.
I don't know. I mean, I put up a YouTube video just the other day that was capturing stuff out of the magnetosphere.
I don't know. What are we going to do, man? What are we going to do?
I guess we just have to depend upon oil and war and everything else.
Yeah, and taxes.
Well,
how much did you end up pulling out of that, Matt?
So I didn't measure the total, but I mean, it was jumping like 110 volts, everything.
Dude, a Rife River pump too.
Yeah, so you can look up the video on Real Rife Technology on my YouTube channel. And Hunter and I did this again. We went up 1,000 feet, and Hunter, he was wearing gloves this time. He actually got hurt. So we're not doing it anymore. This was a really quick video.
And one can use a balloon instead of a drone, and then you don't need to actually be using any sort of energy other than the balloon's buoyancy to get harvest it and work the system.
So
yeah.
So he's wearing leather gloves. He's got thick insulated shoes. And I don't suggest anybody do this because he was actually really scared and I had him ground out and everything. And whenever I'm grounding this, you have to remember I'm grounding to a galvanized piece. This is a clothes hanger, like T-shape. I forget what it's called, but it's only like 2 foot in the ground in sand. And you'll see me stick like the other end of the electrical meter in the ground, and it's still doing like the same amount of grounding out.
All right, I found a cool balloon story right here.
These designs are similar to the what they use to go on the deep dives in the ocean too. It's interesting because it's the same designer. I don't know how they're interrelated, but
Is this a balloon or a drone? No,
This is a drone taking up one of my Royal Rife coils. So it has no open points on it. Everything's sealed off. It's double enameled, and I'm still capturing more energy than what I could with the bare copper net.
Have you ever
You can
guys?
probably fast forward a little bit because until I zoom in, it takes a little bit of a minute.
They built this blimp with 4 helicopters on it. Speaking of balloons, it was called the Paseki Helistat, and they built it for heavy lifting so they could combine the dynamic, buoyancy capabilities of a blimp with the lifting power of a helicopter. So here are the 4 helicopter bodies on this thing as they wheeled it out for its, this test flight. But it was built to like be able to lift really, really heavy payloads. For
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the size differential here between these and a CubeSat, I mean, at first I was thinking it was kind of silly to suggest this, but I said it anyway. The fan, like the cooling fan on a CubeSat, would operate a bit like a bit of a propulsion system, and so
Or
it
if
could give you
put
some glide.
4 rotor motors on it, right? Like the old Zeppelins and stuff, how they were able to steer them.
Well, they probably
That's what they're
have
doing right
4. They probably have 4 propellers if it's a CubeSat, because that's the system for how it keeps itself cool. So, but the way it would work is the air is pulled in. So as the air is pulled in, it would be pushed out the back of it. So that would give it a bit of a propulsion.
Yeah, I mean, it's pulling it in from the front too, which is drawing it up.
well, there it crashes.
Well, yeah. That way, and the idea here is to make sure you don't accidentally think that it makes sense for you to have free energy. Because if you used a balloon, then that'd be crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the mechanical structure of this. Why are they leaving it so blank on the back end when they know it's going to be pulling forward and it's going to have
This
draw
was a
on the
horrible
rear?
design of how they mounted those.
Yeah, well,
Did that.
It feels like they messed it up on purpose, but I don't know.
I was just about to ask that. Like,
some people are dumb. I mean,
police
the thing I
sabotage?
have to remind myself is like, so I met a lot of people that work in engineering that aren't really brilliant. So it's totally possible.
Rewind that a little bit and watch how all 4 of them fall at the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
That does.
craters.
All right, Rife. You know what though? That's interesting because it's so screwed up synchronistically.
It's
that it
so
almost feels
perfect.
like perfectly wrong. Yeah.
It's the perfect storm.
God.
Similar
It looks
to the
so impressive of a mess up.
Hindenburg disaster. Almost.
yeah.
Well, Hindenburg disaster was the diesel engines, right? So that wasn't even.
Oh,
really...
the thermite paint on the hull. They painted it with that aluminum paint, and it had like the the aluminum particles in it, then aluminum nanoparticles for the paint, and like the iron oxides.
Lest we forget the Sonora Air Club, right? So in the 1800s into the early 20th century, there were all of these Germans that were working on these airships designs, and the Sonora Air Club was building airships all across America, and you can find the NIMSA group, right? And NIMSA people that were building airships, and newspaper reports, like someone landed in their experimental airship in Kentucky in 1811, someone lands in 1790, and so it's constantly more airships than we're ever told. We're always like, oh, there's not that many airships. It must have been this crazy experiment.
1790. Haven't you ever heard of the Wright brothers? That was like 1800s. They were the first people to create flight.
Yeah, and that was also funny for Ripley's Believe It or Not, because Ripley got in trouble because someone said, oh, the first person to fly across the Atlantic. It's like, don't you mean the 39th? And because he's also and if you count 41st person, because you said first man. but there were women on the Zeppelin before that. And he shows like 20, 30 years earlier, Zeppelins have been flying back and forth twice.
Now this is a different design. If you go back, you'll see 6 blades on those helos.
Another thing is
those,
the
and
Zeppelin,
that's U.S. Navy, and the other one's U.S. Forest Service.
a difference between a balloon airship and a Zeppelin is a Zeppelin refers to the name of the original Zeppelin designer, but also the metal frame. So there's a metal frame inside of this balloon that's keeping its shape, and that's the main difference.
Yeah, the rigid body versus the inflatable.
But the
body,
thing
yeah.
is, these differences matter so much less now because you can make materials that bend like brace wire, right, out of plastics. So you basically can build the frameage into the plastics now.
Yep.
You could have a briefcase with a Zeppelin in it.
Can we do that?
Someday.
Yeah, for sure. Out of graphene and some sort of a really thin film.
I don't know if could you do it? Like, would that be enough to lift you? Because
yeah, I mean, you could definitely the size of it and the ultralight quality. The main question would be also you often want some
James
displaced,
Bond, dude. You just go to the rooftop and open my briefcase and fly away.
but you need some
ultralight
displaced
is what?
density. So you
125
can
pounds below, you don't have to have a pilot's license. Is that what it is?
right, yeah. And also, if you don't have an engine, is a thing about experimental gliders. So not having an engine is really useful because you could really just have shoes with like something on them.
A map showing the general locations of the Minutemen 3 silos in the United States.
So right over where
Yeah.
all that balloon was.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. The Minutemen silos.
And how did it take them getting all the way into Montana for NORAD to like find it and identify it? If it's,
I feel like it had.
supposedly
Who
from
discovered
China
it first? Was
across
it
the ocean?
did NORAD point it out,
Sneaky.
or was it some like freedom, like some sovereign citizen people in Montana that looked at it? I don't
And
think it
probably
was originally
UFO
China.
people. Then they
Yeah.
were like, we got to.
I think Biden was going to let it happen because China does what they want to do, and we just let it happen because we're supposed to have these relationships, and the scientific community is supposed to transcend military, and we're sharing information, and we're pretending that they give us disclosure of the information that they collect. And
Well, if you look at the latest, like the press briefing by the U.S. military, they said, well, where is this balloon? He said, I'm not going to give you an hour by hour, but I'll give you like a general location. He said, but if people really want to know, people have the freedom to look up. So they could obviously see the balloon.
Yeah, like it was visible the entire time with the naked eye. That's what blows my mind is like the claim that it came across the ocean and like through Oregon or Washington or even British Columbia, Canada. It wasn't identified at all through all of that and then made it into Montana before all of a sudden it's spotted and becomes an issue. Like that doesn't fly with me.
Well, what does fly are Chinese spy balloons.
well, I know it's been said before, but I just wanted to like make sure the harp on the point, the Japanese weather balloons, because our introduction to World War II really centers around the Japanese balloons that threatened the American sky, which was like not real. First, there were lanterns that were probably made by the U.S. government, and they pretended the Japanese kids were sending lanterns across the sea just to make us feel the imminency of a world threat when you're just so isolated from any problem. And then from there, the Japanese balloon, which might have been real, but I mean, what exactly were they collecting with the Japanese balloon? It just seems kind of like a suspicious story. And it flew over the skies of Montana in 1944. So Matt had said something like, it kind of reminds me of a ritual. Like, okay, here we are at that schedule again. We're back to the Montana balloon story.
Yeah, it's the same tricks over and over and over again, kind of like the passports in 1980 and also Cuban Missile Crisis upon nuclear.
Well, let's go back a little ways to World War II, where there was an Asian balloon that floated over Los Angeles and was fired upon by, anti-aircraft guns in our military. All the spotlights of, Beverly Hills and were brought
this
out.
is a weird one.
uh,
The Battle of Los Angeles. So what
Yeah.
the heck do you think? Because like Mark was talking about this
Well,
earlier.
the
What do you think
military
this
said it was a balloon. I mean, so
I mean, a
obviously,
weather balloon. This is. Are we back to the Men in Black thing again? I mean,
it was a Japanese spy balloon that
what's this?
was
What's it?
bulletproof.
What's it called? I mean, or is
Wait,
it?
it was bulletproof?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay.
It sounds. Think how ridiculous that sounds. Come on now.
What did they? But that's the question. Is like, what did
What
they think
was
this
it?
Japanese spy balloon is supposed to be collecting? What kind of data do they think this Japanese spy balloon is getting? Is it sending it back, or it just seemed to me like they're pretending it's a Japanese balloon? It could be something else. It's just crazy. This is a couple years before the Japanese balloon. So it
UFO.
feels. Yeah. Look at that. What is it? What are we looking at here?
That looks like a
Aliens.
disc craft to me.
I mean, it would take a lot of time in that time period to be able to set up spotlight to go into the same angle to like the latitude and longitude to light that up.
Pretty crazy, man. And these are the pictures we get of it, which are kind of not a
That's
lot.
more intimidating the one that we are seeing today. That's for sure.
I mean, it's
I don't
way
know, man.
better of a trick.
I'd rather have the identified Chinese spy satellite balloon, with balloon
Oh, yeah.
thingy, than this.
Sure. For
These
sure.
things showing up, man.
I mean, the fact is, and you know this more than anybody, Jeremy, is that the laser guided balloon system that's coming, like projectors on balloons. I don't know why I'm finding these cute party balloon tricks, but if I
Well,
type
they even
military,
said,
will that
like,
help?
Like this one, they're like, the military can't shoot it down because they can't shoot it down. But the new spy balloon, they can't shoot it down because they don't want to damage it. They want to capture it intact. So that was that's the big problem with them trying to, intercept these balloons so that we can, and what they really want to be able to do is intercept the balloon and send bad intelligence back somehow.
Camouflage technology, though. I mean, the kinds of things we've seen, like the invisible jets and everything else. Yeah, Stefan. Jean Picard was a Swiss high-altitude balloonist whose wife may have been the first woman in space. Star Trek
August
likely named
Picard.
after this guy. Yeah, for sure.
August
Jean-Luc
is
Picard
the
is
one.
named after him.
Jean Picard is the one that went deepest in the sea in the Challenger in 1948, I think. 1931 is August Picard, who went the highest in the atmosphere. But yeah, the whole Picard family, the Swiss Picards, are insane in their research in atmospheric and deep ocean. Thank you, Stefan. Yeah, they're my favorite balloon people. But yeah, cool. Glad your people know about that stuff.
Wow.
Yes, the video. They have videos of his first, like, his big flight.
I mean, if they can project though from
Theory.
the sky any sort of visuals, and they can hit clouds with lasers and project anything, then you don't need to see anything that's above anything. It's moving super fast, and so any of these balloons are basically invisible and innocuous. That they can stick around for a long period of time, and they can just sort of record everything going on. That's the best way for them to have access to all of your data.
Yeah, because I mean, the Chinese have the subsonic missiles that can go all the way around the globe, but it's not stationary in one period. So you can do 0-day attacks or anything else and collect all kinds of data.
There is a really interesting conspiracy theory about the subterranes, which is that the Soviet Union did build, and this part's true for sure, subterranes, which are these drills, and they embedded them into the California coastline. But the story goes that they've lost track of them, don't have control of them anymore, and that there's just a number of nuclear warheads that have been drilled into the California coastline, just kind of abandoned from the 70s and 80s.
Oh, I've never heard this.
So
are these like drilling, like,
are they like on the San Andreas fault, like ready?
Yeah, totally. And it's like the idea is like they didn't have enough future in nukes, and they were trying to come up with a be all end all, like, hey, just stop it, kind of a thing. But then the Soviet Union kind of collapsed, and so they don't necessarily have control over some or ways to access some of these anymore. They're just there. But there's also the Soviet San Bruno, California. Like in San Bruno, California, they brought tons of Soviets, and there's always like terrorist attacks, houses blowing up, crazy spy espionage things going on because deadly gas explosions, right? Because the Soviets were brought in. They said, hey, if we don't bring them in, then the Afghanis or the Saudis are going to get them. So we have to pay to bring the Soviet citizens, scientists into and keep them somewhere. And they brought them here. And so there's just a ton of Soviet scientists that end up in San Bruno, and it's right by the airport in San Francisco. And there's supposed to be underground tunnels and drills. It's a major area for underground. So the idea that the Soviets have been there and that they have control of this underground access point in San Bruno.
Oh God, Elon Musk is messing up then.
Oh, and that's also where there is a boring company, like one of the first boring company things in San Bruno.
Yeah. Wow.
That's sketchy.
All right, so you got any more balloon stuff left or anything left for balloons? Because I'm about to wrap up my stream. I think we covered a ton of. We nerded out on balloons hard for an hour, and I learned a lot. I'm sure our audience has learned a lot from all this. And
I'd like to know your thoughts on them using a missile to shoot it down, as opposed to just like their like a gut, the whatever type of gun the F-22 has, but like some sort of machine gun, like bullets or whatever. Why would they use a air-to-air missile just to pop a balloon? And why not show off something like a tether or a net?
We need to net it in or capture it. Oh, I thought we scared all the girls off. There she is.
Brittany's still here.
I think they just want to downplay technology all the time. They're like, we'll just pop a balloon in front of people because that's how dumb people are. We literally they have no idea what's going on. They think there's a balloon above them. They're worried about the balloon. Pop the balloon. Problem solved. Like, it's so weird how dumb the world can be. I'm sorry.
It's cool. Actually, thinking about the people that actually were in the manned balloon flight. So they obviously made it so that they could just be unmanned, but it's exciting.
And the woman balloon flight.
It looked large enough that it could like legitimately carry someone, or like someone could stay in a pod on it or something like that. Like.
Well, also these balloons are like the 3 school buses.
There's something with Rolex watches too, by the way. Sorry, with the research and funding it for the atmospheric and deep ocean dives too. If you look in, not right now, but just your viewers, if they look into like the commercials and promotion of Picards and doing that stuff. So something
sun
with the Rolex
sensor, wind sensor. All the different sensors. It's like, so you don't even need people because you've got these machines. They can see things, they can hear things, measure things, and you pop one balloon, and how many thousands? I think there's 60,000 loons. And you think the Chinese didn't make that material? I'm pretty sure there's more balloons out there. And
not only that, but you can go to ChatGPT and program an Arduino to do all this.
Right. This is basically what a CubeSat is built on the Arduino system. So it's all open source, and you can plug in and play. You can build your own. And yes, the easiest way to launch it is in a rocket. It's a balloon. And then you can get this stuff to a certain elevation where even without the balloon, with electrostatic, it should just stay up there. So that's the other interesting thing, is that there probably are more of these. They're just floating around.
I'd like to build ones with like a power cell that you could power, but basically fly it around with electrostatics, like Biefeld-Brown effect.
Wow.
That would be
There's these crystal salt. Was it the nuclear battery? Nuclear.
You see the battery we made?
They're recycling these batteries by taking. So
you can put you put fluids in there, and the pH gradient across there will create a voltage just from a differential in pH. So you can 3D print this and
nice.
Wow.
Can you explain this a little bit more? Like, what's your catalyst in the middle?
I'll go into that a little bit later behind the scenes, because
okay.
But you can build these. I think there's a video out there on it, but I'll talk to you about how the construction of it and go into it a little bit more, but not right now. I'm gonna jump off here, guys, and
for sure,
close.
I'll end it on your channel. Xirtus,
you.
you still down for going for another hour on?
Yeah, we can go a little bit longer. Let's do it.
Okay, and then
Jeremy, though, it's an
Good.
awesome.
I
I'm
have
glad
some
you're here.
questions. Thank you.
much
Yeah,
love,
thank you
Jeremy.
guys. See you,
Jeremy.
Mark, everyone over at Falcon Space, and next Saturday, Jeremy, we're on with the Hutchinsons for the crystal battery cells, or what day would work best for you next weekend?
I will keep you posted on that. For right now, I have to see because I'm coming back on Friday.
Okay.
So we'll figure that out.
For sure. It'll be one of the days next weekend.
Yeah, one of the days next weekend, and I got to get some. I want to do more with the right. We got to do more like into this Rife technology and some of these experiments on that. And
Looks
get
like
really
it's coming now.
deep.
Yeah, we're about to be doing it.
Yeah,
Experiments are here.
Jeremiah actually got the gold unit today, and I was talking to him on the phone for a bit. Andreas, I don't know if yours got delivered. I can check it really quick if you'd like.
Brittany's gonna go to the post office and make sure. Or did you go to the PO box?
And
we'll see.
I
We'll
thought it
figure
was
out.
coming to.
I'll just say if it was
David.
delivered to the address or not. But I know
I sent him a
Jeremiah
link
got
to
his
join.
today,
I
and
sent
I
him a
were
link
going
to
over
join.
some
Maybe
bits.
he'll join after
Yeah, Jeremiah's
I
probably
think,
got
yeah, I
that
think he
all
will.
ready to go. I
check
hope.
your email, Jeremiah, and join up.
Depending what he's
Yeah,
doing,
hopefully-
he's like,
You meet text him?
Should I end it on your channel now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna close it down.
Everybody,
Thank you
make
for
sure
watching, guys.
subscribe
On
to
Alien.
Jeremy Rys. And
Yep.
And it's still live on Crypto Alchemist and on Xirtus channels, which I'm posting in the live chat. And it is about to end on Alien Scientist.
make sure you guys subscribe to Alien Scientist. And also,
Exactly.
we'll be back to talk more with Jeremy. I want to get to talk to you more about molten salt nuclear batteries because I think it's interesting, the idea of you take the recycled
thorium
nuclear
batteries.
salts, man.
Delivered
Shake
front
them up.
porch, Andreas.
Yeah? Okay, great.
Nice.
so that's at
Yep.
David's. That should be, I think, is where you sent that. Okay.
Wait, to
Question.
David?
Okay,
We'll have to-
it's
we'll check
still
the
under
address
live on
afterwards.
yours,
Sweet.
and
Okay.
still live on Xirtus, Crypto Alchemist, and now also on my BurnEye. I believe.
I have a question too. Once we get back about the response to the balloon and the military, like, have they given a reason to why they haven't shot it down?
They have shot it down now.
Oh,
They
okay.
claimed
Yeah.
they didn't want to hurt anybody or
Okay, I
risk
figured they'd
anybody's
have.
safety over the land, but the areas
that
that
could
crossed
fall.
was pretty ridiculous.
This is a pretty fun thing. The chilling Soviet maps of San Francisco, likely for communist takeover. They mapped all of San Francisco, all of the secret, all the factories, all the open and secret places, military bases, military intelligence, corporate contracted data centers, sheriffs, the IBM infrastructure for AT&T, whatever, all of it. And they had planned to, if they needed to, know exactly where everything is. Even then, China has even better maps than this because they have maps of all of the Wi-Fi addresses
So
and everybody who has a Huawei device in their house, right?
Okay, so if this
they
was
shot down the
2017,
balloon, and they found the boy and a boy inside of it.
What?
What?
No, I'm just kidding. This is the balloon boy. The balloon boy.
That'd be such
Oh
a
my God.
1982 kind of movie. I want to see that movie though. We found the
What's
boy.
your name? Say
Don't
I'm
worry.
having boys so I can
The
ship
boy
them
and his
across the seas
balloon
and see what
instead
happens.
of the boy and his bubble.
his balloon.
He's a Chinese spy balloon.
Starring John Travolta's. Wait.
I'm sorry.
This November.
I couldn't help myself.
Back.
That's hilarious. You got me. I was like,
That was Bernie in the balloon.
feasible.
Word. So, but okay, nuclear salt batteries, you shake them and then it causes a chemical reaction, which releases everything out, right? So that's the idea, that if it shakes everything up, then it produces energy and that should last for like 1,000 years. And you shake it again and you get another 1,000 years. And you could do this probably for tens of thousands of years with a AA battery because it has just a little bit of molten salt that was used in a nuclear reactor, right? And it should work, actually. I mean, as far as I can tell, this is enough to actually hold electricity and to cause new electricity. Hey, Julie's back.
What kind of
What's up?
clearance would you have to build?
Welcome back, Julie.
That's a good question. I mean, because you'd have to get access to like molten salt, a toxic waste. So if you know a guy in Norway, right? Isn't where are they doing the nuclear waste storage? Is it Norway or
I
Finland?
know a guy in
There's
Iceland. Is that
places
close enough?
in the Netherlands. They have it too. They have one in the United States too. A lot of
Yeah.
No,
nuclear
but they're
storage
building
waste.
they're
Yucca
building
Flats.
one Scandinavia. Where is it? Finland. I knew it was gonna be Finland.
Holy crap.
So Finland built this thing. I want to get the pictures because the pictures will really just blow your mind.
Deep.
They built these giant places all underground. It's supposed to hold most of the world's nuclear waste. It's gonna be like the world's dump for nuclear waste. And
Holy
Oh, they're gonna dig up that one at the atoll there, the dome.
the world's first permanent nuclear waste repository.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, so
First?
it's the
Are you
tomb.
kidding?
Did you ever watch that movie, The Keep? There's this like awesome gothic, like horror, late 80s Bauhaus kind of like synthesizer wave horror film. It's amazing. It's they go to this little village in like some Slavic country in World War II, the Nazis, and they're like, we're going to take your village. And then they're like, you can do what you want, but just stay out of the keep. The mountain, it's called the keep. We don't go into the mountain. It's like, you cannot tell us what to do. We will do what we want. And then they go in anyway. It's like, you don't understand. It's like, it's not that we're keeping you out. We're keeping it in. And it's just like horrifying portal world that opens up that's in this like underground abyss that's connected through the gates of the Nether Lounge, and you get there through a hole in the mountain into like emptiness, right? But that's basically the same thing. Building this giant infinite corridor to put nuclear waste that no human's ever supposed to go again, and there'll be a machine that lowers it like an elevator.
That sounds like the Earth's constipation point. That, like, don't go in there. You're going to release every kind of evil that's coming out that we've stored for years.
Sounds like
The
Cthulhu.
Balrog
Yeah,
at the base of Mordor. I mean,
nuclear.
Dude, who is approving all of this? Why are people not able to say anything about it?
And how close is it to the particle accelerator that is in Chicago, like CERN?
Dude, 85,000 metric tons of nuclear fuel has been produced by the U.S. alone since the 1950s. We have about 80 sites. The amount of money that they're going to make being able to store this stuff. I mean, Finland's looking at making a lot more money than Norway's making off oil.
I'm just going to make a prediction. In 100 years, Finland's going to be lit up like a light bulb, and that's where all of our energy is coming from.
That's the thing, I imagine. So, wow, look at this. This is crazy. So they build this crazy. Look at this. If you had a demon and you had to trap it, this is probably how you would do it. You'd put it into this crazy Minecraft level, and you just, holy cow. And then machines would bring it. Oh, man. Yeah. And then salt reactors will just store it forever.
Also,
Bernie, you mean Fermi Labs, the one outside of Chicago?
Oh wow.
We have a super chat.
Good,
Stefan
Stefan.
Kalan.
Let me
Some
throw
baseball
Stefan
cards
in
have
here.
small squares of authentic game-used uniforms. I have an Alien and Ginter baseball card with a small piece of the multi-layer foil from Balloon Boy. Alien Gonzalez? Did I read that right?
Yeah, you read that right. Alien
that down.
Gonzalez.
Elian Gonzalez.
Alien Gonzalez sounds like a little bit.
Also,
I think it's just a different pronunciation.
we don't have the thing Andreas was saying about the first nuclear storage waste site, because there's New Mexico has also, like, I'm just wondering what they're identifying as the first site where they're storing it, because we've been storing nuclear waste since the beginning of nuclear energy, right? So there's the waste isolation pilot plant, the WIP, in New Mexico too, which is interesting, but it's like we're just storing it all over the place. And I think we could have ancient technology that's also been
the neutralization of all of this nuclear waste is super easy. I think that they're lying to us.
Well, and you can reuse it. You can also bomb certain places and speed up decay or change the element itself and then use it again. I was looking into that using different types of bombs in places where they found uranium deposits to make it more pure by, yeah, it's an interesting science, but that's like your Army Corps of Engineers that get to do that. And nobody else really gets to learn about the mechanism, I don't think. But it is fascinating. And I think you're onto something with that. Because they're refining it and reusing
Yeah, I mean,
it in ways.
just the simple neutralization is really easy.
Can you go into that a little bit more of what you're saying? Because this might be linked to.
So the radiation point of nuclear waste, you can neutralize it just by diluting everything that's in it, and to be able to spread it out to where it's not even like to the high levels of radiation for cancer production or anything else. So you can use it to help compost. You can use it to help do many different things because it is energy. It's energy being released, and any kind of energy, whenever you break it down, you can subsection it into different categories. And if
So
you
using different
subsection-
solvents to mix
I freaked out my brother earlier when I explained to him that energy drink comes from radiant water.
Yeah. So, I mean, just like this radiant water. Okay, let's take iodine, for example. You can take iodine pills and you drop them into a 5 milliliter bottle of water. It's only going to release so much, right? So if you take that and, you know, people will drink.
Oh, they took him out. They were like, that's the limit. That was the limit. They shut you down. They're like, up.
Keep going.
Oh, you're muted.
You're
Or
muted
you lost
even.
your audio somehow, Matt.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't drink radiant water. They stopped the radiant water. Get another energy drink that gives you wings.
Yes, definitely don't. Not recommended drinking anything that glows in the dark or that is radioactive. Just saying.
Testing 1, 2.
Yeah,
Listen to
We
cassette
got you
tapes
back.
at low volumes.
Yeah, so. Sorry.
Diluting nuclear waste with different mechanisms is where we were at, I believe.
Yeah. Okay.
Or
So
neutralize.
if you, let's take energy for example. You have a storm rolling in that has positively charged ions in the air that causes, you know, a lot of atmospheric excitement. You can change those positively charged ions into negative, and you can fight against it. So the same thing is happening within nuclear waste. You can spread this out over a period of like acidic soil, and you can put this on it, and it's going to change it to like a more neutral pH balance.
Can you also repurify then by adding different things? If you've already had expunged waste, like, can you make uranium more pure by doing something to it after it's been used? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, you have magnetism also. Electromagnetism can pull.
Yeah, I'm not really too sure on that. Andreas would be more familiar.
I mean, part of the thing is like you can either consume the energy or you can move the energy, right? You can either like find sort the energy, consume the energy, move the energy. So certain things like mushrooms or livestock, the Codex Alimentarius talks about putting nuclear waste into human food product and livestock product because you can naturally digest and process nuclear radioactive waste. And so cattle can do that. If you look at I wish Lance was here, the Chinese maps of agriculture, I don't think I can find this just like that quickly. But if you do look at this map, and I wish I could get the subtlety of this map plus Chinese map of nuclear waste or nuclear production, you'll find that these places are congruent with each other. So they put the rice that they're selling to you in America and the rice from Bolivia and things like that. A lot of that rice is organic, but it's grown in nuclear waste zones where it's being used to process the nuclear waste naturally.
Yeah, and that's how they're helping to compost the soil. They're creating soil out of nuclear waste because energy cannot be created nor destroyed, and you use that energy to be able to take something that's desolate and that's in the doldrums and put energy into it, and it becomes liveliness for other things.
You could
Now,
get,
I don't
like,
know if that transfers
superfoods.
into organic, like
Yeah,
food
you get
growth.
like super tomatoes and like giant avocados and stuff when you're growing it
Not
in the
as
radiated
not
soil.
necessarily, but there is. Well, so one of the things that they do, for instance, is bananas, mutations, radiation. They're doing so in order to rapidly produce new bananas that can be resistant to fungus. What they do is they use radiation to rapidly mutate the banana sequences in order to evolve bananas in a way that would take usually tens of thousands of years for nature to do, theoretically, whatever we understand that to be. But that's also probably what happens every time a volcano goes off in Polynesia, is that it causes bananas in that area to change a lot rapidly. So if you look at bananas in general, and we've done this before, varieties, there are bananas that are just friggin' amazing, pink, blue, purple, whatever. Some of them look like flowers or watermelons because of radiation. It doesn't mean they're going to necessarily become bigger, but it will change something. So like, let's say radiated silkworm. I don't know if I can find this.
Use coils though to increase the growth of a banana, like how Jeremiah is using coils to regenerate life from dead stuff.
I just wanted to show, like, so this is a silkworm, and so silkworms are kinds of moths.
What?
And so if you start finding, I've seen radiated silkworms that are huge, like, let's see if I can find giant, and so literally as big as a bat. I've seen, and usually they're supposed to be the size of a fingertip, but because of radiation, you can see some of these things have grown super large. Like,
why are they called silkworms and not silk moths then? Or what?
Well,
do they change names?
Because metamorphosis, you know.
I know, but when they metamorphosize,
it's really called.
Do they call
It's really
them
called
silk
a bomb.
moths?
It's really called a bombyx mori. A bombyx
Okay.
mori is the name of the animal, and it goes through metamorphosis when it becomes the moth. But we think of it as a silkworm because for thousands of years we've been using it to make silk as a worm, and we don't really care about it as a moth. And moths eat our clothes; they don't make our silks. You know. I love the bombyx mori. The bombyx mori is my spirit animal, probably one of my spirit animals.
I need to get that helmet for like Halloween next year. I'm gonna be a bombyx mori.
I
Oh, that was
used to
cute.
think-
That was
I
adorable.
used to think, like, if I were to become like a superhero, because, you know, of course, that's the kind of thought I'm thinking about. But if you were like a Power Ranger or Batman or something like that, right? I would be bombyx mori. Come on, because you could get like the Power Ranger helmet and it'd be sweet.
That's
silk.
gnarly.
Wow. Anyway, radiation can make that happen. Let's see, radiated worm or caterpillar. Let me see if I can find it.
No,
giant.
I think we.
And Galen Windsor said he swam in nuclear waste pool.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of these things that used to be giant, also like some kind of DNA releasing their giant DNA again, that would be that does happen to some extent, but we haven't seen anything like the Godzilla movies yet, really.
Jeremiah's going to do it with coils, I bet. Just don't let him get any animals on those coils if he's like regenerating life.
Right now he's doing basil.
Ask him. I know, I want to ask him, like, have you put an insect on there? Have you
there is a lot of thoughts that, like, so where this does happen, of course, is underwater.
Mothra.
When you get down to Mothra for sure. But when you get down to the sea, you know, there's nothing stopping things from growing different sizes. There's no bone structure in a lot of these things, like the squid, similarly. And there's radiation and heat coming out of these volcanic submarine openings. So things that just never leave these zones become super huge, right? Because they're super fauna and they never leave, right? Things just fall to them at this level. And so they just stay there.
Yeah.
So I did a study. I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, and it was an old wives' tale. Like, if you look at the worms that come out, it'll tell you if you're going to have like 6 months or 6 weeks of winter, or 6 weeks of I forget what they call it in summer. I was just trying to find it, but it's the color of the worm. It's like black, brown, black, or all black. That would tell you that.
So I did a study about groundhogs.
Well, not your guys' groundhog, because he just passed away right before he was getting ready to perform his duty.
Dude, it was like Elvis. Yeah.
Yeah. But
got too proud.
Yeah, it was kind of like the groundhogs of the Appalachian Mountains, but I think it's through radiant energy, because they could tell the energy that's coming about, so that they had to have black to be able to keep more heat in. because black's attracting all the different colors and all the frequencies of the sun versus the black.
Dude, groundhogs are terrifying. Imagine like the ancient giant groundhogs. Basically just a sloth, man. Horrible.
Yeah, it is.
Man. Where's this like next to a person? God, I don't want to deal with that. Can you imagine? It's the worst thing.
I used to have a pet
But they're basically
groundhog.
marsupials. I mean, okay, if it's small, it's fine. I can deal with that.
Yeah,
A small groundhog.
you had
But
you
if
had to
it's
get
6
it
feet
whenever
tall?
it was a baby and it had its eyes closed still, so that when you're the first thing it saw.
How big did otters ever get?
I feel like when they went to the deepest depths of the Mariana Trench, they saw something, because there's an image of when they got there, or otherwise there's like things cracking. But I'll try and send it. It's pretty horrifying. So I know you're just talking about that, but in extreme elements, you get extreme creatures. It seems.
Well, touching back on the radiant energy thing, this is what I believe in, like the waveform of gravitational pull that had the Nobel Prize presented in 2017, 2018. That if you look up the coral reefs all around the world, they only release sperm one night out of the year, and it's not the same night every year. It could be 2 weeks off or a month off or anything else, but all like they speak to one another just like a garden does. Just like a plant that's growing too large and another one needs nutrients, it'll supply nutrients to that plant to grow higher. So this is radiant energy through the earth, and this is what helped me work upon, like the wireless electricity theory of Nikola Tesla and Dr. Harkenstein. He beat me to it, but it's still the same theory. It's all radiant energy.
Right, and that's what it is collecting the different radiant energies, because we're literally immersed in a sea of different universal radiant energies, and therefore this free energy isn't energy out of nowhere. It's not breaking any of the laws of thermodynamics. It's just being more productive with what is in there, like what's around, and more efficient with our current devices and using the energy that is everywhere.
Yeah, and if you look up the first law of thermodynamics, it says that you're not going to get more energy output of what more energy that you put in. As much energy as you put in is what you're going to get on out. So it is radiant energy. Energy is not created nor destroyed within our own atmosphere, and this is why we can collect all of this energy that's around us, but we're subjected through different rules and regulations that we're not allowed to do it. Okay, so the work put in is the exchange of heat and friction and everything else, and that's the only output of energy you're going to get. So however much energy you expend putting in is what your result's going to be. So this goes
Kinda
back to
true with
perpetual
everything.
motion, but what's that?
I'm just saying that's like kind of true with everything. Continue.
So the perpetual motion machine, this is actually, and I know that there's a way to make a mechanical physics will to be able to do perpetual motion, because we do have gravitational pull. Just like if you take PoE coils and you wind them counteractive with one another to where you put them on top of each other, but you bury them up underneath the ground to where gravitational pull is pulling more energy in that toroidal field, that you can have it keep on going, just like what Rodin was trying to do, but he never perfected it. So if he would have used gold, is my theory, because gold on the Gauss like magnetic meter is like 80 microtesla or something above ground, but it drops down to exactly half below soil. So soil is the energy, and then we have the gravitational pull that's affecting it as well.
Brittany, what's this? You pulled this up.
That's the deep dive. They look a little horrified. Sorry. That's what I was bringing up earlier. This is Jacques Picard, the son of the man that went the highest in atmosphere, designed this. And when they got there, I think it was because they said the glass was cracking, but it seems like they had maybe seen some type of crazy, like the abyss. Hence the movie
Cthulhu.
is about this experience, I think. It's just my speculation. And then no one went that deep until James Cameron, which is also interesting.
Did you see James Cameron's acid trip yet? Did you guys all watch that?
Yeah, it was nuts.
He did this video in the 80s, I guess, where he talked about taking acid and
Several times. He
Yeah,
talked
with his
about
wife and
5
stuff,
different
and-
experiences.
One time, he's like, "Man, I really shouldn't have thrown water into the fire with my face right above it." Is kind of a thing, but
there was
yeah,
bullets in the fire from it was a nuts story. I randomly watched that like 2 days ago, and I think I shared that in your Discord too. I hadn't seen
pretty
it.
interesting.
The wife that made the Hurt Locker, that won the Oscar for the Hurt Locker.
Probably, I don't know.
James Cameron or what?
James Cameron.
He got to take the Challenger. He got to like make his own.
He married 5 times, so I'm not sure which
he got
wife
to
is the
go
one.
to the Mariana Trench too. I thought, didn't he?
Probably the one that was in Terminator. I don't know.
Linda Hamilton. Isn't there?
Is that the same guy? The guy with the beard and the guy shaving?
Yeah.
James Cameron, man.
James Cameron, young
James Cameron. He's the Avatar guy.
James Cameron with Botox and with stem cell
Did he do
research.
Abyss too? Right?
Yeah.
Or
Did he do Abyss?
I don't know. He should have because he got to do it. He's like that guy. Who is it? Who
made Abyss?
Who directed Abyss? Can't be James Cameron. That's like too old, isn't
James
it?
Cameron. Yeah. James Cameron.
No.
James Cameron. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like
No,
this.
it's the cards. I'm done.
I mean, he wanted to be an engineer or scientist or an explorer or something like that. He had all the money and all the access to anything he wanted to do. And so that's why he's obsessed with like 3D movies and everything. He's like, I just want to have access to whatever everyone else doesn't. That's his whole. That's fair. It's a fair goal.
But wouldn't it be like NASA or the military that should have that record after the Picard's son? Like, it just seems bizarre that James Cameron gets to be the next person that gets to go that.
He has the money. He built the thing, right? He financed the whole thing. So I think that's the way that works.
Money gives you access to resources. Resources gives you access to depleting the rules.
Right? Did Stefan make it? Stefan, what's up?
He's gonna lose it.
Loading. There it is. He did it. What's up, bro?
Welcome.
Stefan.
Oh, this is a nice look. I like this. This is good. This is a good look. What's up, bro? How's it going? We're talking about field energy, free energy, stolen energy, perpetual energy, first law of thermodynamics.
I never know which one's. I never know which is
energy.
the British curse word.
It's all of them.
Oh, it's forwards versus backwards. That's a good random thing to bring up. Peace sign backwards Britain. You guys know this, right? In America, they told you not to put your fingers the other direction because this is the FU. And I don't know how true this is, but I love the story anyway, that it's about your bow fingers, because they were saying, hey, look, Gales or Janissaries, we still have our bow fingers. So you didn't cut them off yet, because they used to cut off the fingers of the archers.
So it was threatening.
Might not be true, but that's a story.
Open
I
is
always heard.
okay.
It's like taunting. It's like, hey, I still got him. You know?
That's your bow.
But that's why they told American soldiers be careful with the victory symbol, because the victory symbol comes off as kind of like, that's a Cockney slur.
Really?
That is, yeah, that's.
I always
FU.
do peace this way. This
No,
is the
if you
bad
put
way.
if you put it that way, like
that's
you're doing,
FU.
don't do that. That's
Yeah, no, I
terrible.
don't.
Well,
I
it also means victory. That's what I heard. Winston Churchill era. It was like, haha, we won.
Yeah, because we still have our bow fingers. I mean, even if it wasn't true originally, I'm sure that's what Winston Churchill believed about it.
Okay, but
They
back in
lose
that
their bow
day, didn't
fingers
they do a
often?
documentary saying that they used the other hand to shoot with on a bow because it was faster to reload?
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's probably no truth to the bow finger story. I think
Yeah,
there's
you
a
wouldn't
wiki thing that says no. They used to. That's the story though. Is cut off your bow fingers.
So you
However,
couldn't shoot? Okay.
yeah, who knows if it's true?
Now,
Sounds like it might
usually
not be.
when you're stringing an arrow on a bow, the arrow, I think, well, whichever side it's normally on, there's a guy who's figured out, I guess he taught himself how to shoot a bow and arrow when he was a kid, and he put the arrow kind of on the quote unquote wrong side, but now he has the world record, according to Guinness, for all these kind of stunts for shooting 2 arrows in the air with the most
doing it
accuracy.
wrong
You
was
can
the
bend
right
them
thing to
around
do.
corners, you
Robin
can skip
Hood.
it off the ground and hit things.
Yeah, so instead of the left side of the bow to where he would line up, he would throw it up on the right side because it was quicker to reload.
It's like Jimi Hendrix and the guitar, you know?
Yeah, he would hold 4 arrows in a single hand and just fire them off.
That's some Robin Hood type of shit there.
Man,
I knew a guy
here's
named
that.
Robin Hood, actually.
Is that related to the legend of Robin Hood? Because didn't he shoot a bunch of arrows?
Well, this guy was just recent. Like, it was like within the last 10 years that like he become prominent on YouTube, was showing all of his videos.
He was on Jimmy Kimmel, maybe.
Shots. It could have been 20 years. Maybe I'm old.
What do you think though about? So we were talking earlier about the electrostatic tether and this idea that we could get free energy just by harnessing it, but that it's so much energy that it's like too much energy. I mean, the ramifications of that much energy that's not supposed to go into a specific singular location. What kind of, maybe that changes the weather patterns. Maybe that is the kind of thing that causes drift of the magnetic current or moves, flips the poles slowly or quickly.
If you look at the pyramids and you look at what they were lined with, it was limestone, and limestone is conductive through electricity. And also it had a gold capstone on top, and it had gold running down all the sides of it. So this is the reason I believe that pyramids were the perfect conductor of electricity to pull it from the ionosphere, and it was running down. And you look at every section that's inside the pyramid, it has different resonant frequencies. So I believe that the Egyptians knew what electricity was, and they could categorize it between A, B, C, and D. Just like oak trees, they have, we have water oak, maple, or not maple, whatever. There's different sectors of the same oak trees. And this is the energy grid, the ley lines up on the earth, right, where all the pyramids are created. So I believe that all the pyramids created the ley lines, and it wasn't something that was already created.
To me, it makes more sense that there was a giant flock of dinosaurs that were flying around the earth and put the pyramid there as their nest site. And because it's geometric, we think we did it. And we might have put layers on top of it. My understanding also is that the layers of the pyramid, when you measure the vertical height of the block courses, there's a progressive sequence that has to either do with prime numbers or with a Fibonacci sequence that is in tune with static electricity discharge. So if the idea that cats were worshipped in ancient Egypt as well, bugs are attracted to light and flashing things, and so they would have been
trust these things that naturally make it work. They're doing it, so you can do it if they can do it.
Yeah, so all of these nests and everything, they have the Fibonacci sequence built into it. But if you look back, and I keep on bringing this up about the APEC and the guy, David, that works for the DOD, he was talking about creating an anti-gravity device that he didn't call anti-gravity, but someone else did. And this is what I want to work with Jeremiah on, because it bounced off all corners and it would shoot straight up. So, Andreas, I think you were telling me about this. The guy who had so much money that he created Giza in his backyard or something that drew water out of the ground. And this is the same.
Like Kid Rock, he built his own version of the Capitol.
Yep, that it flooded like the basement or something.
Yeah,
it wasn't Kid Rock.
Building the locations that they choose, though, I think it is interesting that there are locations that animals frequent naturally show up at. We're just another animal. We show up at the same watering hole as everybody else, and then eventually decide to build our house there.
But he's talking the technology that you showed that they used to build the pyramids that could have been done through water and routing. Is that what you're talking about? Because I know I thought way differently, and then you had done a video on floating the bricks, like whatever the
idea is that they created an enclosed tunnel, and then with the water pressure you could float blocks up the side. It's because people can't get through their head that balloons and blimps existed back then. And yes, that was with, if you could wheel in your sails and get the jib tuned in, I'm not even using the right sailing terminology, but you could use that same set of block and tackle to moderate the vertical uplift forces from the blimps, so
Right.
that you could fine tune them and use them like a crane.
And
essentially.
even
So
as
it's helping
simple
your
as
point.
just you've got like rocks. So the thing is, you've got a path from the Nile, and the Nile. This is also it's interesting, I think, for the dramatic timing. Like someone should definitely make a movie with Brad Pitt, kind of a thing about it. But you take the water, the Taman set's dammed up so that the water can't flow, and the water coming down from Ethiopia. So also you got to see Egypt, Ethiopia. We have 3 seasons in Ethiopia. You have 4 seasons in Ethiopia, 3 seasons in Egypt. So when the 4th season of freezing ends in the North Mountains of Ethiopia and the water starts to flood out, then you have the 3rd season that continues twice as long in Egypt, which is the flooding season.
And
so
there's
the
a big
water
dam in Ethiopia that just got built and was a huge controversy because everyone downwind or downwater of where that dam is going crops or
right, and that's exactly what happened in the Bible, right? Because in the Bible, the story
Interesting.
goes that Joseph comes the Technicolor Dreamcoat. He ends up as a slave. He ends up in Egypt. He ends up working for the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh's the house. It's like the mafia. It's one of the rich families, and he puts them in the most power that there ever been in Egypt because they dam the entrance to the Nile so that they can start building their new city, supposedly. And in the process, they have 7 years of plenty, and then they have 7 years of famine for everybody else that's downwind of them. And those people then they have to buy crops from the Pharaoh in exchange for their animals, their livestock, and their land. And then they end up just using that livestock on that land that now is owned by the Pharaoh. And so they become
Is
basically
Andreas's
serfs.
mic clipping only in my ears, or is that everyone else's too? Just
Oh, I'm
wondering.
sorry. It might be my fault for the mic being way far over there.
Oh no, now we're good. We're good.
That's way
How
better. I'll
was
put
that
my
all
mic
the
there.
way off screen, but we could still hear you?
I don't know. It's terrible. I got excited, but you get my point that there's a flood season, then there's a drought, 7 years of drought, and from that they end up taking over all of the land of Egypt and turning everyone into serfs. And so this is happening again. But in the process of doing that, they were able to divert the water for building the pyramids, probably because you take the water, you flow it around this area, and then all of a sudden you are able to take the rocks, attach them to bamboo. And then from the bamboo, let me go back a page to show you the picture. You can have floats, right? These can be stomach linings of gut that are actually leather sacks that can hold balloons. And they're just holding it up a bit with buoyancy so they can push it around.
Where
But
did
that's
all the
enough
megafauna
buoyancy.
go?
How many times over?
To make giant floaty water sacks, right?
These are the guts of these giant animals. Yeah.
This
That's,
reminds
I mean,
me
that's
of,
a more plausible theory than migration or breeding issues or hunting. Well, it's a form of hunting, but purpose driven.
What's the
And
name
the same
of that?
balloons, when you see whales floating in the sky in some of these ancient, or even like a kind of steampunk era type stuff, that is actually what you would use for a giant balloon in the old days. Would be a giant
you'd use
skin of a
bladder,
whale.
stomach.
What do you call that? Like the ancient water flask that's made out of a gut. You know, I'm talking about these things.
It's called a witch's bottle, and it has crystals in it when you shake it that illuminate. Have you heard of that before?
I think that's different, but still sounds good.
It's because we can't accept that they had light bulbs back then either, and that we found them, and that they weren't built out of glass. They were built out of skin that had been shellacked to create a closed system. But separate issue. Just on the pyramids quickly too. Might have been an anecdote. I don't remember where I heard it, but a guy gets to the top of the Great Pyramid and he has a wine bottle that's empty and maybe tinfoil that he sticks in the neck of it and holds it up over his head, and sparks shoot out of it.
Yeah,
Because
so that's
whatever
the
electric
energy being
system is,
created.
it's still there. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's the energy being created that I was talking about. Like, because it does bounce off the inside, and limestone is conductive, and that's what they used to have on the outside of the pyramid. So it would travel up just like a transformer does on higher gauge wire than lower gauge wire. Is going to create more current, but it's going to create more energy going upward. So it's
I've
going
seen it also happen people on a hike, if they're on a ridge or a cliff, and when they hold their hands up, even without any wine bottle or tinfoil, they've got electricity shooting out of their fingers just because of the grounding force or the something in the area.
Yeah, that would probably be because of positively charged ions, and then they're just going up to a higher altitude, and they're grounding everything out. And they are, it's organic
It's like a power
material.
plant.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah,
I also think the
it is.
pyramids are just a tailings pile, and usually the tailings pile is either going to flood your neighbor with sand or so. Instead of building a giant pile of sand that would keep washing back into whatever tunnels they were digging, they found a way to make like a sandstone concrete out of it, and that was just the most efficient way to stack it. And again, it doesn't have to be a human intelligence that did it, or even even a primate.
The pyramids are really weird to me because like they would bury the pharaoh at the very bottom, but they would always have like a 1 inch by 1 inch square hole, like a 1 inch square that was shooting straight to the North Star.
I think that's like an analog to how Jewish couples used to get together, where they would sew them both in their sleeping bags, kind of, and just cut a small hole for. Sorry.
Well, maybe there's some truth to
Misnomer.
what they talked about yesterday with the seer or the remote viewer that was able to ascend with someone that had died and was headed towards the moon. What was that? Was that on your show, Burn? That they're talking about that? I'm trying to remember.
No.
It was remote viewing, and somebody died. Edward Casey.
Oh,
And they said
yeah.
there was a bunch of them remote viewing the same person, and they all had to stop because he started to go towards the moon. So
Yeah,
maybe
so that
they
was
don't think why there was something like North Star or where the soul ascended to.
I remember hearing.
And that's what it was with the pharaohs, because they would release his soul and he would go up to the, to the stars, and that's the reason they drilled a hole all the way up directly to it. Not drilled a hole, but they constructed the pyramids with that in it.
I think they were saying that's what keeps you reincarnating, like when your soul goes to the moon.
They like physically saw this. I don't think Julia was even. Were you there when they were talking about that? Probably not.
No.
Everyone knows the word yeet, right? Y-E-E-T kind of means to get flung. So I saw something where it's a form of quantum locking, where they took a bunch of small neodymium magnets and kind of had them hovering, and each time you added one, it would kind of snap into a different geometric configuration. And then if you added one too many, something about it, one of the other magnets, as soon as you put that other one into this floating array, the other one would just launch and just disappear off the frame of whatever. So
whenever they drop them.
This is on a small scale, and so the implications is if you had 5 blimps hovering on some electrostatic charge and someone else came up to join the fray, who knows what forces are at work, and it could just boot someone out of whatever balanced array that they're in. Or I don't know if that made sense.
Yes. By what are you changing in the atmosphere to do that, though? You're saying they're altering,
like the harp sort of stuff in the
yeah,
on a hole in the ionosphere.
Well, again, I'm not sure how it would work on a macro scale. What I saw was a tabletop experiment, and the implications of it are rather frightening, perhaps. It implies that there are forces at work and things that may be unanticipated.
certain amount of hertz.
I mean, the bottom line is I don't look forward to the Great Reset for a couple reasons, but
Right.
between the goal of releasing a bunch of these extinct megafauna, which are going to be pretty dang tall. I mean, that's a 6-foot bird, basically. So, right? Am I wrong? No, that's a 3-foot bird. Sorry, not 2 meters. But still, I mean, there's a bunch of other birds that are that tall.
Herbivores, aren't they? They're not carnivores.
No, dude, birds are psychopaths. They like to eat people. Here's what's coming, is all I'm trying to say.
The loon bird can eat 2 pounds.
Coming back.
5
The
pounds a
loon
day
bird?
or something.
You mean like the loon, like my Minnesota State bird?
The loony and
now everyone's microphone is clipping. I wonder if it is just me.
all sorts
The
of
loon is terrifying, man.
No, they disappear.
Loons are peaceful.
They have a
They
beautiful
make that
mouth.
weird noise.
They can eat like 3 times their own body weight in meat every.
There we
single
go.
day.
He's finally here. We got him.
The loon
Phase
himself.
shifter. Good day. Welcome. Did
Oh,
you get
hey, Jeremiah.
your files, good sir?
Oh, Jeremiah's here.
Yay,
Right
Jeremiah.
machine? How is
Audio-
your plants look? I
Audio
want to
test.
see how your plants are
Audio
looking.
test is working.
Okay, good. I just will notify you that because of where I am compared to my signal quality, if I'm talking, you guys will be able to hear me, but if anybody else is talking at the same time, StreamYard will auto prioritize me as last, and it'll cut out anything. Just so you know, this is
The whole stream's trash in my end right now.
bad.
Is that true
I
for
can't
anyone
have
else?
like
or-
a sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I can hear what you're saying, but everyone's clipping in and out.
Right. Well, the broadcast, as far as when
That sounds good to me.
it actually shows the audience something different and lets them hear something different than what the
Oh,
rest of us hear live. So that's one of the things that I noticed about this program is like I'll want to hear something that somebody was talking about, and it sounded perfect while I'm in the actual stream, but then I go back to do the rewatch, and they get completely cut off. So
Yeah,
mute.
I'm working on fixing that by both learning editing as well as now doing recordings, local recordings for everybody. The StreamYard's given this new option for audio and video local recordings, and then I get it afterwards. I don't know. It's a process. I've been trying it out. It seems to be working, and hopefully.
okay. So as per the usual, I've got things set up. Give me just one moment.
Perfecto. Live demonstrations are always nice.
I'll just go ahead and pre-warn you guys. Jeremiah and I talked on the phone. I was very disappointed at my own coils.
Oh,
Oh, who and the what now?
Yeah.
I see.
I mean, well, Jeremiah knows way more than I do about electrical engineering.
We lost
Very smart.
bits.
And so anytime I hear something negative, I'm disappointed in it. But I'm very, I'm looking forward to what Jeremiah can continue on with to improve about it.
Eager to learn.
Right? We're all here for learning. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I
And-
definitely will agree with that completely. This is a whole learning experience. Nobody has all the answers. We're figuring this thing out as we go. And quite frankly, I consider all the coil technology, it's a very modern iteration of a very ancient geometric technology. But by using electromagnetic fields and trying to produce some of the same results that were done by gaseous discharge, and then prior to that were actually done by large stone structures and various crystal resonators. I mean, it's just the latest iteration in a long series of geometric studies that affect the human biological system. All right, so little radiation roadshow. I just got these gifted to me earlier today, and these are radium clock dials. And so it's too bright in the room to see them, and they don't glow as brightly as they used to. So I do have a little black light source, and you can see them glowing there underneath the LED provided UV. And here I'll just reflect it off the pan so you can see that light right there. That's what it looks like. But yeah, some of these are very, very highly active. Like this one here is powder from a bunch of clock hands that have just been kind of ground up, scraped off. What I was surprised by, and the reason why I needed radium, is because I've been looking into radioactive batteries as permanent or lifetime device power solutions. And right now, radioactive batteries generally use something like a tritium vial or some other gas or some other outgassing or radioactive decay isotope that produces photons as a natural result of its decay. Or perhaps they use like a scintillator crystal to produce photons. And they use little solar panels inside to pick up that tiny fraction of a percentage of the radiation output from these particles that are also pumping out alpha and beta particles. So alphas are just extremely, extremely fast electrons. They have a negative charge. The trouble is that they're going near relativistic speeds when they leave. So the fact that you have an electron flying damn near the speed of light coming out of these radioactive sources makes it very difficult to use. And so radioactive batteries of today don't use it. They just waste it. Instead, they try to produce photons with it. And then the other thing is beta particles. Beta particles are extremely fast particles that can be protons, neutrons, and these things are also traveling with such high velocity that you're going to need to slow them down, but they will have a positive charge. And so generally you're looking at a proton that either quickly decays into a neutron or simply pops out of existence and becomes energy and produces a huge burst of gammas as it does so. The point is that there are many different ways that a material can decay. It can't, depending on what kind of stress it's under, but protons and neutrons, when taken and stripped out of the atom, are not very stable. And what the old way of doing it is to capture the alpha and betas, which are alpha is negative, beta is positive. You would use a parallel plate grid, and you would impart an acceleration momentum to the two particles. So it would fly past these two grid plates, and you'd have the positive plate on the top here. You'd have that on the alpha side, so it's going to repel the charged particle, and you'd have the negative plate on the beta side. So what this is going to do is slow down the velocity of those two particles and also experience an electric field increase between these two plates. And then you have another set of plates down the line at the Fermi distance for where you want to collect these charged particles, and they'll actually fly apart and hit the plates, or they'll cross over and hit the plates and be absorbed. So in this way, we can actually use the real energy of a radioactive isotope, in this case radium, is what I'm planning on doing, and making sort of a, I guess you would consider it sort of like a clay or like a soft acetic gel that will allow me to bombard these with electromagnetic fields and try to increase the rate of decay cyclically in an LC oscillator, so that as these physical charged particles are being collected and added to the power of the circuit, I can also simultaneously boost the radioactive output by high frequency or ultra high frequency bombardment. So just to kind of show you what these things are doing, and by comparison, these are pieces of uranium ore, just raw uranium ore. Some of them are more colorful than others. You can see some like yellowish, greenish spots, kind of look like yellow cake. This one has a lot more of those spots on it. Never actually tried to see if these glow. Yeah, I guess, yeah, they don't really glow. Nothing like the radium, unfortunately. But this is ordinary uranium ore. And we can see on the meter here, it's fairly, mild. I wouldn't consider this dangerous. Like, I'm not worried about holding it because it's not incredibly powerful. We have a huge piece over here. And even if I stick the probe directly on that huge piece, we can watch that meter rise there. We're going to peak out at less than 0.3 or 3,000. So by comparison, here are some thorium mantles. And the thorium is mostly an alpha emitter. It also emits a decent number of betas.
Jeremiah, can I interrupt you right quick?
Yeah.
I just want to check. I can always just try hopping in and off the stream. Is the sound clipping for everybody else, or is it really just on my end? Because
I think it's just on your end. Yeah, it sounds okay to me.
Because it fixed when you pulled the mic closer when you did it. But this is the kind of thing that if I'm tuning in as an audience member and the mic's clipping like this, I don't know.
Yeah, no, we can't hear it clipping at all. I think it's only on your end.
Interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Jeremiah.
It could be in your headphones there.
Yeah, I'd rather have you interrupt an audio issue instead of letting it continue on.
Yeah. But what you were saying was interesting. Okay. You're playing with yellow cake, for goodness sake. Maybe that's what's doing it. Yeah.
But it's not quite to that stage. Like I said, that was natural uranium ore. You can simply chip it off pieces of rock on sites that are totally available and legal to do so. And they're not refined. They're not super strong. And I was showing them as a comparison. Now this is some thorium. These are thorium mantles as they appear. These used to go in old Coleman lamps, and if you heat these up under a flame, they get crazy bright white. And so they will be a great converter of just any kind of thermal energy into a photon source. They will very easily give up electrons. But this is basically those mantles that have been burned down under a high temperature flame. And this is a total of 4 of them in this little bag. And oh man, is it hot. So if I just set that directly on there, you can see we're already climbing past 4,000 and above. So from about this distance, it's not all too wild. And this is where it gets interesting with radium, because radium is so retardedly radioactive compared to uranium and thorium that even if I get it close like this, like I'm not even touching it, I'm damn near pegging my meter already. And all of these are basically like that. This one in the back here isn't quite as hot as the others. Now, these were clock handles, and they're the most UV responsive. They're also the ones that still glow. If the lights are off, they still have enough radiation to continuously produce photons. So they are also crazy hot. You can just see the meter being pegged up there. So that kind of gives you an idea. And here's the powder. Again, I'm still about 3 inches away, and it's pretty hot as well. So the reason why I really needed radium is because this radioactive battery patent that I was offered to me by Anthony Williams, great patent, and I have about 25 other nuclear battery patents. Well, that one specifically talks about a very simple mixture of uranium, thorium, and radium powders mixed together, basically pressed into a wafer about 5 millimeters thick, which I don't think it needs to be that thick, honestly. And then there's a layer of zinc, and then there's a layer of copper, and then it just kind of alternates between cake, zinc, copper, cake, zinc, copper to form this entire pile. And around the sides of that pile are a set of electromagnetic pulse coils to oscillate this thing using an LC oscillator. And according to the patents and the design, the stack of these materials allows the freed electrons and charged particles to have a polarization under the magnetic field, and it stimulates emission of radiation, meaning that the decay rate actually goes up cyclically per peak of current going through the coil. And that, to me, that concept was just amazing, because what that means is you have something larger than a AA battery. Sure, you have something larger than a computer chip, radioactive cell. But what you end up with is a radioactive system that doesn't produce leaked radiation because it's being captured completely inside the cell. And on top of that, you have something that can power, say, 10,000 watts instead of something that can only power a fraction of a milliwatt. I mean, literally, radioactive batteries of today, they can't keep an LED lit. They don't have enough power. But using this method, they could. So we're going to find out. I've got the ingredients
They
now.
just can't
And
do
there's-
it, Captain. They don't
there's-
have the power.
Oh,
There's
can
no
I,
risk of saying they're not going to like explode or melt down or.
I want to really quickly show this footage just for a second. So this is some footage that Dolly Moore took of, it looks like the balloon coming down. She says, okay, so here's what I just caught a few minutes ago out my window. I saw a jet go by so fast, and then the explosion in the sky. Holy. Billings, Montana. Official communication Billings, Montana stated, we've confirmed with Montana that there have been no explosions in or around Montana. But then there's this video, which is like, kind of looks like, the Elon Musk rocket or something going down.
Yeah, that looks more like a rocket trail than, I guess that could be a very extended out.
Hey, Brittany, what was the name of the comet, that green meteor that came in the other day? Do you remember?
Those gases would have just
Yeah,
went
green.
right into our atmosphere and not left a trail like that.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
If you were going to safeguard technology about going to space, one thing you might do is give all the information about how to get up there, and then this is people trying to get down. Oops.
So that's
Yeah.
supposed to be a balloon, hey?
Yeah.
No, that's
That
not.
looks like a rocket trail for
Yeah, I'll believe it if
sure.
it's on fire. I mean, if the official story is the thing was, shot down with something like a military laser and it was on fire as it was falling, then maybe that makes sense. But otherwise, like,
I thought helium and
Come
So
on.
definitely not Joe Rogan just
Yeah,
asked the
look,
question if radio
Wow,
is
they
radioactive.
have that much flammable material on board.
It's a chemtrail.
Oh,
What
yeah.
you're looking at is a mirage, I guess. So
What?
Jeremiah, do you want to comment on that? There was a question from the audience about aren't radio waves radioactive? And like even visible light as a form of radiation is radiation, right?
Okay, yeah, visible light, the entirety of the electromagnetic spectrum, from the longest wavelengths, naturally occurring telluric signals, all the way up to the extremely short gamma ray bursts, and those above those frequencies are all part of the electromagnetic spectrum, and they are all forms of radiation. The differentiating thing when something is radioactive versus when it's simply electromagnetic radiation is when the material on its own produces electromagnetic radiation simply as a result of its process of decay. That's what makes something radioactive. When you don't need to put in power.
Infrared is also. I mean, are we decaying if we're emitting infrared light? I don't know.
So is that only organic? Okay, time out now. This is linked to like organic chemistry as well with decay. So there's certain things that don't have any type of radioactive decay.
Yeah, I mean everything has technically some radioactive decay. It's just that a lot of materials they're fairly stable, so they have decay half-lives that are like as long as the span of the known universe, so far as we can tell. And so technically they are always at at risk of decaying, and you might at any point just have a random proton pop out or a random neutron pop out, and you could get an isotope or a decay product or a transmutation of the element. But the chances of it happening are so incredibly slim, and the half-lives are so long because they are so stable that we don't consider them to be radioactive. To say the least, they're beyond our methods.
Jeremiah, you actually have a full table of radioactive material. I'm going to send you a Faraday apron.
A Faraday apron. I have a Faraday
Yeah.
apron. That won't save you from gamma radiation, not one bit. In fact, it won't save you from gamma, beta, or alpha.
Best I got. Best I got.
Oh yeah, no worries, man. I'm building a bismuth case for this stuff.
Okay.
Well, maybe you should postpone until you have it.
Just hurry up and have some kids, and then you can do it.
Or have like gloves on, maybe. I don't know.
You know, people
I
are
love Jeremiah so much.
afraid of radiation, and they don't need to be afraid of radiation. They just need to understand what the dangers are. They think if you're irradiated that you somehow are now walking around radioactive. No, you've actually got to get that stuff into your bloodstream. You've got to get it into your skin. So you notice everything I have up there.
You do not have to get that stuff in. Guys, do not get that stuff into your skin. No, you don't have
I'm
to.
saying
No, that's it's for it to affect you. It's not
In order
encouraging
to
it.
be dosed with a lethal amount of radioactive material, it's got to be on or in your body, is basically what I'm saying. And so you've noticed that everything on the bench, it's either in a bag or in foil or in a container or something else that allows it to be handled so that the only thing coming off of it is the alpha, beta, and gamma radiation with absolutely none of the physical material possibly entering my skin. So that means when I walk away from that table, I'm not taking it with me.
Having said that, don't anybody try this at home. Don't anybody.
Are all those baggies sealed? Is it getting into your lungs?
Yeah, they're actually vacuum sealed. It's hard to tell. Yeah, I've sealed.
See, there is that.
I'll actually be redoing that again because I want to standardize the size of the packets so that I can tell exactly how hot they are per square centimeter. And so I'll probably be resizing them into 2x2 centimeter packages for a 4 square centimeter exposure area window.
Wow.
It just gives me some standardization so I can tell which is what and exactly how much energy, radioactive energy, is being emitted from it.
And you're recreating these batteries. How long do you think they're going to last?
My guess would be somewhere around 350 years.
What? Can I buy one? Can you put me on the list?
I'm sure that I am not allowed to sell them.
Okay, I'm just kidding. Let's rescind that last comment. But
we can go find some in nature and collect samples.
I will find some in nature.
Yes, I can't sell batteries, but I will tell everybody exactly how they're being built. Because all the materials on that bench are totally legal for me to own with absolutely no license and without regulation, so long as I control them, do not sell them, and do not refine.
How could you sell them? Never ever. You can't there's already patents for it, or if you're changing it up a little bit, can't you make the Jeremiah battery?
There are patents for probably just about any variation of a radioactive battery, but the problem is that when you produce a radioactive battery, that automatically gets screened by the military industrial complex for its use in their applications. And the reason why we don't have high-powered
national security
radioactive batteries today in the civilian world, and why every time somebody like Elon Musk talks about the idea of a different type of direct conversion radioactive battery, it's huge news, even though these things are in deployment in satellites, in military vehicles, in critical systems, all over the military industrial world.
Yeah.
So is the second that I try to patent something like that, I automatically will get pulled into that analyzation. Told, we're buying this, here's the money, shut the hell up. And if you don't, you'll end up in Guantanamo. So that's it. By just simply telling people what I'm doing, which is entirely legal to do. If they do it themselves, then it's also legal for them. Just don't sell it and don't try to patent it.
And we do not recommend playing with radioactive materials at home or pretty much ever.
It's not the same as saying get your own chickens and eat your own eggs. It's way different than that. Way.
Well, I don't know about how much bad information is out there regarding the handling of radioactive materials and the safe usage and demonstration, but you have to keep in mind that professors in universities across the world every year will handle these elements many times per year throughout the course of their lives and be just fine during the course of demonstration to their classes. And that's basically what I just did today. Is none of these things are so incredibly dangerous that I have to worry about it. It's not something that I'd want to put on a pendant. That'd be insane. It's not a piece that I'd want to sleep next to. But there's something that I can have completely across the room for me. And if I take my Geiger over here, it's got one of the most sensitive windows I can buy. I mean, it's ticking basically as much with the radiation it's receiving from that as it is from cosmic background and gamma ray bursts and stuff. So, like, when you're 10 feet away from it, you really don't even have to worry about it existing.
Dude, what about the red mercury? Stefan, are you still here? And Jeremiah, what do you think about red mercury? And also Rife. Anybody? Red mercury?
Well, the new red mercury, because again, we can rehash the same old faux propaganda since 1970s and fill in the audience that probably has already watched every bad documentary about red mercury that's out there. Yeah, I don't know if it's true, but the new one is the Congo rocks. And I'd love, we can talk about red mercury too, but I'd love to get Jeremiah's input on what he thinks about.
Yes.
Because speaking of getting things on your hand, these guys look like they've been drawing with graphite all day, so to speak, and their hands are metallic almost. And then they're holding
What
two
is
rocks
this?
together that are just sparking.
Jeremiah, have you seen this new
I'm
material out of
taking
Africa?
a
Where,
look.
False claims.
yeah.
Go back to sleep.
they just put like two wires up, lights up the LED like nothing. Supposedly, this electric material.
You know, that sounds an awful lot like Thomas Townsend Brown's gravitational isotopes, which are apparently also permanently charged electrical materials. He made a version of a brick that could, when it was being shorted, it would produce its own heat. So in winter, you just short the bricks out, and when they weren't being shorted, they would produce enough power to run your stuff. And you'd best build your house with these things, was his idea. And they used these materials called gravitational isotopes, which were just either powders of rocks or solid rocks that would just generate voltages. Hutchinson kind of came across this too. This part of his original and early days of crystal power cells is he would just take one of these big rocks and jam electrodes against it. Like,
There we go. That's what I think.
This might be a dumb question.
Yeah,
but
we'll have to bring
I
this
wanna
up with
ask-
John and Nancy next weekend in our next third episode with them on the crystal batteries. Exactly this topic that we are discussing.
Yeah, Samuel Cohen said that red mercury is manufactured by mixing special nuclear materials in very small amounts into the ordinary compound and then inserting mixture into a nuclear reactor or bombarding it with a particle accelerator beam.
That actually, like, theoretically, it sounds practical. Jeremiah, you said you don't personally believe that one compound of it is accurate. It's like we've discussed it before. It's
yeah, the mystical SP206 or whatever formula.
yeah.
What I can tell you is I don't know about whether or not that formulation is even capable of existing or could be chemically synthesized. But what I can tell you is that the videos of somebody showing a little vial of red mercury and then you see their hand in what looks like a mirror, and it's not visible, and there's two plates and they pour it on one of the plates and you can't see the reflection in what looks like a mirror. Anyways, if you watch those videos really closely and you slice them up frame by frame, it's actually not a mirror. It's a little wall cut out with a clear see-through, just nothing in it, no glass or anything. Sometimes they'll put glass just to get the reflections. But anyways, he's got his hand on the right side and the left side, so you can actually see.
Explain that again? You're saying that he
moved
claimed that because he dipped his hand in mercury, you could see through it? Like,
No, this
No,
red
no,
mercury
these are
that sorry, Andreas, can you scroll down just a little bit on this and vibranium?
Word. I was gonna
Is that
just
what it's
show
called?
vibranium. Okay, so I was just thinking about a couple things here. So let's go back for a second. First off, Black Panther has this magical rock called vibranium or vibranium. It's like vibration.
Okay,
rock.
yeah,
It's magical rocks in Black Panther.
That's
So
fictional. That's from the
well, I
movie.
mean, it's in a comic book. That doesn't necessarily mean it's fictional.
Based
But
on
it's smart
vibranium-
metal from an asteroid.
if you think about what's it called? Tantalum. Tantalum is made of coltan, and coltan is found in the Congo. And so 80% of the world's coltan is mined in the Congo. You have it in your laptop, you have it in your cell phone. It makes your technology you breathe. 1 kilo of coltan is worth $400. The people mining them make less than $10 a week. It's It's used to make tantalum, a heat-resistant powder that can hold high electric charge, vital component in modern capacitors. So
What's this called
this is
again?
This is called coltan.
I'm gonna
Is there
find it in
anything to
about
back
an
that
hour,
up? Like proof
guarantee.
of
Which part? Well, you can look up coltan. I mean, you can see if you like want to see coltan mining. I mean, I've definitely seen shows about people mining coltan
It's
and
probably
different
found
copper.
in near and in volcanoes if it was used for power, for sure.
okay.
That's really interesting. First time I heard the name coltan.
Yeah, me too. It's in a
I've been
concept.
Joe
looking
Rogan
for-
did just do an episode where he brought on someone who talked for 2 hours about this type of mining.
Yeah, I mean, there's copper mining, coltan mining, cobalt mining, all these different things that they're using for.
Definitely related to volcanism as well. If you look into coltan volcanoes and images, they're coming from all different types of volcanism too. It looks like, I don't know, interesting. And probably from asteroids, as there could have
But-
been launch technology as well using it.
So there was the one video of this new rock that was dug up in Africa, though, that like straight up they put 2 wires to it and it was like lighting up lights and stuff.
Ooh.
Well, right, and so
Do you
the
remember
the Associated Press, what was it called? What was it called? What was the Congo stone called? Congo rock. The Associated Press. God, that bird freaks me out. Right, the number 3 is the one that really I don't want to
Oh
deal
my
with.
God.
But they were saying it looked like it was probably pyrite or something. But
It
I
looked
think
pyrite-ish.
well, that's what they're claiming is that it was fake and it was really just pyrite. But if it was actually something else, coltan isn't too far off looking from that, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if it was something. But then they're saying you couldn't have electricity stored in it already.
bismuth growth. No, not that one. I'm sorry.
Which one? This guy here?
No, yeah, that one. Just without the colorization.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
So this is the alleged video of it. Yeah, easily could be faked, right? It could have a battery like in between the rock and thumb or another wire.
Looks like there's a little light.
Right, but it's like, is this a legit discovery? Is this stuff real? Very, very fascinating.
I mean, if you go back, it looks like he has another rock in his other hand.
Right.
Too. So
yeah,
it could
like
just be making
easily
contact.
could be a prank, but would like to hear more about this. If
Can I ask Jeremiah too? And it might be related or totally non-related. But
yeah, so
how
like, was it exposed as a fraud, like not legit, or?
Yeah, he's holding something else.
And if
Well, that's the
Jeremiah's
thing,
there, I
he
want to
isn't-
ask you
Here, go ahead.
about virgin magnets and how they impact the life, if they impact lifetime of battery, or if they're involved, and how that, if it's an untouched magnet versus can you recharge a magnet to its full capacity as a virgin magnet? I just kind of wanted you to explain.
Yeah, I can
how
talk a little bit about that. So
Sorry.
a virgin magnet just is going to refer to a magnet coming straight from the factory. And by the time it gets to you, it's already been touched probably, 40, 50 times after
So
it's
no
got
longer a
chlorine
virgin
tested.
magnet.
Well,
Or what?
there never has been such a thing as a virgin magnet, because in order for one
Yeah.
to, you would have to have an entirely machine automated process in which nobody ever materials.
Aklo.
ever-
There is the phrase, the
That's
idea of
the
never
6 power
sullying
natural nuclear reactors are virgin magnets. Okay, thank you, Jeremiah.
Okay,
So
so
there's
there's
no
a different.
such
Hold on, then.
thing.
That means there's a different definition of virgin magnet that I'm not familiar with, so I'm not actually answering your question with that.
Well, no, once it's touched by anything, a human, it's no longer a virgin magnet. It has to be literally found in its origin. its
But if you
original
create
state.
can't you create a new magnet by
Yeah,
isn't it ship with
absolutely.
Theseus?
Like,
right.
for example, I can take a 1-inch by 1/8-inch thick neodymium disk magnet, and I can repolarize that. I can completely reverse the direction of the north and south pole on that if I want to. I can cancel out the poles and squeeze them to the center. I can make half of it. I can make like a ring of north on the inside, a ring of south on the
Okay.
outside, and repolarize the angle of axes, though it doesn't work as well. So yeah, you can completely repolarize, remagnetize, unmagnetize, and change the field position of any kind of permanent magnet. It's the easiest to do on neodymiums because they have a very low Curie temperature. It's a lot more difficult to do on ceramic magnets because they are incredibly rigid and they don't like to repolarize. but it is possible at 1,000 degrees. It just, you've got to get the stuff.
Is there male, female, and does it impact one side more than the other when you're talking about a virgin like magnet? Like, I don't know if that makes any sense. You know, the ALien Scientis breakdown, I've been just trying to understand what he's talking about, the essentialness of having a virgin magnet and a male. And once the female magnet is soiled, he keeps referring to, that cannot be brought back. And the closer they get together, the more chance they have of destroying each other, essentially. But it's the female that has to be pure, he keeps going to. So
it's an interesting way of looking at it. The way that I see magnets, and I can kind of describe this. If you just take a look at, you say you take a disc and imagine just you draw an arrow all the way around, you know, the face of the disc that's moving, you know, that points clockwise. So you're just using an arrow to say clockwise direction. If that was a clear disc and you flipped it upside down and you were looking at it from the opposite side now, the arrow will be pointing in the other direction. Now imagine that arrow represents the inside of the magnet, and it represents the trillions of little aligned electron valence spins that are giving it its magnetic field. All that arrow really means is that the direction of the electrons as they're orbiting around is in clockwise from the face that you're looking at, or counterclockwise from the opposite face. So if you're looking at the clockwise face, you're looking at the North Pole. If you're looking at the counterclockwise face, you're looking at the South Pole. But technically there is no North and South inside the magnet. There is no actual separation between a North and South Pole. There's just one single spin direction that is shared by all of the electron valences. So it's just, I look at magnets more like a rotation and a spin direction, instead of considering them to have a North and a South Pole. And that's it, as far as atomically and molecularly, that's what's actually going on the inside. So it's just that we give names to which direction we're looking at it from.
So it's all personal then. It's you know.
Yeah, the preference of North and South is really a preference of terminology, because there's just spin, and you can say I'm looking at the clockwise side or the counterclockwise side, which is technically far more accurate.
Okay.
It's a weird way to consider magnets, but when you understand how it is that they work, and you can use that same knowledge to reprogram them and do just about anything that you want with them, then it becomes a very useful thing to know.
Have you read A Good Book for Every Home and decoded it then? You're the only
I've
person
never actually heard of it.
Oh my gosh, that's ALien Scientis' coded book for how he made the Coral Castle, and you're probably the only person that could accurately decode it, because it's written like it's about a girl and a boy, but it's really coded because it's about magnetism, and he's talking about the Sweet 16 and virgin magnets. And yeah, dude, that's interesting. Someone tried to decode it, and I caught the video and realized it was about magnets and electricity and how he had done the Coral Castle. Anyway, I'll send you a copy sometime, and it's a quick read, or you can even find the PDF, but you could break that down probably better than anybody.
What was that sound? Was that just Jeremiah falling over from all the radioactive activity on the table?
It could have been me, or I heard.
Okay, he's still there. Never mind.
Sorry, it could have been me. It could have been like my heart, what? Sorry, I'm freaking out. Awesome.
I need a copy of that book as well. I've seen a couple people that have done a couple different portions of deciphering Ed's work, and it has to do with the magnetic geometry of how the field and current of magnetic force moves.
Interesting.
And I've seen some people add color into it, into like a three-dimensional system of it.
If you read it without knowing, it sounds very like perverted. It's all about not having sex, essentially. Sweet 16, and it's a birthday, and she's got to be a virgin, and it's about magnetism. And
exactly, yeah, and
it's interesting. It's mind-boggling.
It's very similar also to like Walter Russell's work and the philosophical metaphysical side of their physics writing and understanding with it too. That it's like,
Yeah, Jeremiah explains stuff so just in ways that it makes sense. So it would be great
Britt,
to have
to tie into what you were saying, there's another kind of allegorical piece of history about virgins being sold. And a virginal used to be like a piano or a keyboard that has never been used before. It's perfectly tuned from the manufacturer, that sort of thing. And so there was like, advertising going out that they were selling virgins at the churches in New England. And probably at different phases of time, that was true in various ways. But
Oh, I've not heard that before. What that
so he
is.
put out a call where Ford
hilarious.
said he'd pay $5 a day for people who were strong and competent mechanically. And what it did, it meant that every family lost 3 of its most knowledgeable, strong, solid members because they all went to Detroit looking for this mythical job for $5 a day that may or may not have existed, or even if it did, was it worth the journey, and what did they leave behind, and what happened to the family as a result of just $5? That was all it took, was someone putting out an advertisement that, hey, we're hiring $5 a day, and like 2/3 of the country's families like starved to death. Oops. And again, I don't think it's on purpose. We do things like this as a human species that I'm always amazed that we're still here. Sorry for the bleak sense of humor.
Oh, no problem. The same kind of thing
I'm
happened
sorry.
during the
I'm
gold
sorry.
rush. Like during the gold rush, all these people came, flying into just about any time that there was a large, public made claim that, hey, there's gold here. And then it's going to be flooded with people that are trying to get their hands on that too. So it's that virgin land. And at that point for the gold rush, it was this virgin land that everybody wanted to get their hands on because it hadn't been, pillaged already of all of its elements. And where you find gold, you also find a lot of other useful things as well, unless you're doing it, in the river and you're panning. Where you find gold deposits, you also oftentimes find a variety of other precious metals. And so it's funny how the stuff gets pumped up from the earth like that, and it kind of ends up flowing in veins because it's far more liqueous than the surrounding material. And so it's
there's also an implication that if you do find sand and you're panning in it, and all you find is gold dust, and you're not finding other heavy metals and stuff, perhaps it was put there. Because I think Jeremiah's, the implication is
and gold
go ahead.
back down. But the river will naturally wash out just about everything else except for the gold because it's so heavy it tends to stick around, and it gets clumped up with the black sand and everything else that's also super heavy that tends not to be dragged away by the water. What are we looking at here?
Vinny St. Vincent channel. So this is good old Roy and some of his experiments with the Edleed Scallon flywheel that he's rebuilt and deciphered and done testing with. And then he connects to all other sorts of experiments. Sorry, what was that, Jeremiah?
Oh, I was saying I talked to him on the phone. It was a pretty good conversation. He's definitely an interesting character.
Nice.
Yeah. Has he decoded the book? Because I think it's like written to Jeremiah to probably understand more than anybody.
I may disagree with Captain's idea of monopoles, and he sort of has this idea of magnetic monopoles flowing in almost a similar way that we consider electrons flowing. And he was obviously able to do something with his understanding. So if I can wrap my head around what it was that he was trying to say, and kind of just forgive the idea of his use of monopoles, then maybe I can get down to the bottom of what it was that he discovered.
If you're in the private chat, I did link the book. I think that's the full PDF in its origin. And I don't know, save it for later if you get time. It's a quick read probably for you. And let us know next time you come back, because
I can't open it now because
right now I'm just saying check it later, or otherwise I'll have someone will send it to you. That's awesome.
Yeah, Vinny's a cool guy.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just can't help it, but dude, stay away from the radioactive material on your table until you get some kind of suit around you, please. We want more Jeremiahs in the world.
Yes, this is great advice. But
So guys, I think it's like botulism though, radiation and botulism. Like if you're in, I think I'm unmuted. Yeah. If you find a bunker and there's a bunch of cans in it and you want to save it all for yourself, you just test one can and you bring out your quote unquote radiation detector and it goes beep 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 beep. Oh yeah, botulism. Sorry guys, no, you guys can't eat any of this. And
Yeah, I can tell you this much. If you had a can that was radioactive, it would not have botulism. Yeah, if you've got that much radioactivity, you're not going to have bacteria breaking down the materials in the can and polluting it, which is what botulism is. Yeah.
and people will literally eat each other before they'll eat something. If a guy with a white lab coat like you, Jeremiah, says, "Oh no, definitely not. No, you can't eat this."
You're probably right about that. That's kind of crazy. Until they start looking at you with and licking their lips and they got their knife out, and that's the point where you basically GTFO.
Jeremiah, how
a
did they
measure of
looking
a
my
surgeon
way,
is how quickly they
Jeremiah?
could perform an amputation. And so if you can do that to yourself and like give the wolf pack your arm instead of your whole body, maybe they'll like let you go. But you got to be able to stop the bleeding.
I'd rather give them the end
Again,
of a rail
morbid. Sorry to bring terrible vibes to the convo.
Oh no, you're.
Now,
It
It is true though that was the measure of a surgeon.
The wolf pack helps.
Was how quickly you can amputate. Because in wartime, if someone's got a lead bullet and they're bleeding out, I don't know.
Well, and so like Walter Russell and Edlead Scallon, they used like the male or female sex gender as the terminology for north or south, or like opposite or attractive forces. A lot of symbology and like hidden meanings within their works and writings.
Oh yeah. So it's not like perverted, but if you read it without knowing that, you'd be like, "What? This is a scientist? This is, yeah." And then once you decode it, especially if you're like, I don't know, a technician of any sort, like Jeremiah, the technician. Yeah, you guys have it all probably figured out. There he is. But Jeremiah is doing the coil experiments too, where he was taking, he bought, I don't know, we didn't know what it was. It was like oregano or
basil.
some element, basil from like your co-op or your Walmart, whatever. And he just had it on coils with water, and he generated a root structure from this material. And I didn't know if you're still running those experiments. I wanted to
Well,
see
actually, we planted them now, so they've been
Oh.
potted,
Can we take a look? Do you still have them under the pyramids?
You put them in the ground.
yeah,
you
it's
said.
not like we're really getting doing that much with them, but yeah, sure, why not?
It's pretty fascinating, Jeremiah. It's just an experiment in itself. So that was really awesome.
So just repropagating, I'm testing these compared to how they handled it without the pyramid, and seeing if there's a difference in the root thickness and whether or not the original roots will have trouble, or if they're going to actually pick up. They're actually quite a bit healthier than the comparable sample, which is here. This one was not growing underneath the pyramid. This one was growing without it, and it's just into the general zone. And the very ends of the roots, although it's very hard to see, they're kind of clearish, transparent. They're not that healthy.
Oh,
So
no. What's the other one? Maybe the crops. They were growing crops in these pyramids too, eh?
So there's the potted basil that we
Nice,
saved
that's
up.
looking
Yeah.
good.
Oh, they're all taken very, very nicely. Some of the green onions being planted. These are just like little 1-inch pieces of the end of a green onion. So we used the rest of it, used all the green part, and then you can see like right there where that white part is. That was all that was left of the green onion, and so now they've got roots, and now we're gonna just replant them and let them actually grow and propagate, and we can get probably multiple uses and cuts out of them.
Well, now that you have a set of my coils, can you actually take one set that's up underneath the pyramid and one set that's not, and just take them into another room that has a Faraday cage between them, run them on 528 hertz, and see which one grows better?
I guess. I mean, it depends on how long I run them for, because if that's the kit that I'm going to be sending back out, then
3 minutes a day. Oh yeah, I mean you can do whatever you want to with that kit. The Royal's going to be there tomorrow.
Oh, okay, yeah, tomorrow. Yeah, that's pretty soon. So yeah, what I'm interested to find out is the other one. I don't know if they're the exact same coils or if they're slightly different.
They're different.
But if they are the same ones, which I guess you could tell me, are they?
It's going to be the same 1.21 ratio on it.
Right. What they would allow me to do is I can just simply use the two thin wire coils at once, and I can find out how the amp handles that by comparison, which will actually be a very good test. So that I'm thinking I'll start with that, or I'll just replicate the geometry and wind it with another 22 gauge. So. And what I really want to see is how it's going to handle that and power.
I would just use the Royal and keep it at 25% where we have it marked, because it runs really well. And I just want to see like the energy consumption of the plants up underneath the pyramid versus not.
Well, I can run it. I guess I'll say I'll run it for a day and see. If
I would just do like 3 minutes a day.
Oh, 3 minutes a day. Okay, I see what you. I thought you meant
take
there continuously like the other one that I have there. I don't
take it to like a Faraday situation to where it's not affecting the plants in that room, and then just run it like 3 minutes a day, and do like in the other room, do a pyramid and no pyramid, because I want to see which one grows better at that point.
Yeah, actually, I can certainly expose them for a few minutes a day. I think I need a slightly larger pyramid as well. One that can actually hold those coils, because right now this pyramid is just a little too small, and I can't use the pre-cut 10-inch by 9-inch panels that I'm currently cutting the pyramid shapes out of. They're just a little too small, so I'll probably just get some much larger sheet. And I still need to metallize the corners. I still do want to chop off the top and put an appropriately sized capstone, because I do believe that'll make a tremendous difference. If it's already going to naturally charge up that capstone, we know that plants grow towards electric charge. Fantastic set of experiments have been done, and we haven't really talked much about this on this show, but there's been a fantastic and extensive set of experiments done to use charge and nothing else to control the growth direction of plants. And my favorite example.
This is something that I think that BurnEye and I were talking about with Brittany and moving into in the future with like soils and plants and agriculture.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to be setting it up within the next 2 to 3 weeks here. A whole series of different seed tests of like lettuce, spinach, and kale.
I kind of wonder if I can do a live stream and set it up here in the office with no volume, because I have workers that come in and just grow a plant and just watch it live stream.
Yeah, that'd be watching plants grow. But at turbo speed, that the town. That's I was trying to say Giant is the soil expert. So Andreas, you should really get Giant in here to talk to these guys if you can, because he's really well versed in that stuff.
Yeah, we're going to put together like at least a monthly, if not eventually weekly, agriculture show just for doing all the different tests with agriculture and focused on horticulture and growing stuff and experimenting with it.
We can get lights, people that are using different types of lighting, coiling, water.
Well, there's a Japanese guy who's using a shield and he's blocking out certain light frequencies, and he's only letting certain frequencies in. He's having amazing results. It's kind of like a UV shade, but he's I forget the material he's using, but I could probably replicate it.
Yeah, interesting.
And absolutely, David will
find my LRH stuff.
Yeah, Brittany, I want to do a show on ancient soil samples.
David who? David's here? Did you say?
David M. In the chat.
Schwimmer? David Schwigert? Sorry. Plasma bubble guy. I'll stop.
No.
Schweiermeyer.
This David M. Great guy.
David M., you're great too. I'm sorry. I'm muted.
I believe also in California, LA, if I'm not mistaken.
Wait, so do you mind if I ask really quick, guys? Jeremiah, what's your impression of the coils? Like, totally harsh criticism.
Well, as we talked about, the copper mass for each is not balanced, and the idea of the half turn ratio is I'm not necessarily against it, but when you're talking scalar resonance, and as we talked about, it's just one wire gauge change. You're just going to make actually the thicker coil one wire gauge thinner, and basically then you're a difference of 0.02% at that point. If the insulation, the enamel thickness is consistent between the two different gauges. So you obviously don't want to mix, like, well, I guess it's not really going to matter what your build is, but yeah, just looking at the charts, you're then going to be 0.02% instead of the like the 1.26 that it's at right now. And that, I think it's going to help it a lot. But the other thing is I would just quite frankly and flat out recommend way more turns on the thicker wire coil. And I would even recommend, going up to like a 3/4 factor, or either that or adding more turns to the other one. And the reason for that is low frequencies. Low frequencies are where the amp is really going to have the hardest time. And it's because the inductance of those coils is so incredibly low. There's just not that many turns, and the amp is going to have the hardest time at lower frequencies, where that tiny little bit of inductance is basically acting like a dead short.
Yeah, so we were talking about earlier, for people that don't know, Jeremiah and I were on the phone, and we was discussing like using a larger capacitor to where it doesn't overload the returning electricity coming through on the terminating impedance.
Right. And the basic premise was this. You've got an inductance that is extremely low, but still present. Any inductance can be balanced out with a certain value capacitance to set a frequency. And so, assuming a basic capacitance decade box, which is just a short name of a box with a few different values of capacitors, that when added together, you can basically choose any digit from 1 to 10 in terms of your microfarads, nanofarads, whatever value you happen to need. In your case, it's going to be microfarads. So just have a simple box that you can mix it, and you're going to put the right amount of capacitance across the coil for whatever frequency. This could theoretically be done with a 6-pole or a 6-stack rotary switch, which is just a component that you can simply buy and use that to switch the coil.
Bernie,
Right.
you're muted. I don't know if you're trying to talk.
No, I know I'm muted at the moment. Thanks.
But yeah, it could be done fairly simply with a rotary switch, and you would just select 1 through 10 basically as the multiplier of whatever frequency you're going to be pumping in. So if it's 528 that you're going to put into it, you'd want something like a 5.2. So your first knob you go to a 5, and then the second knob you'd go to a 0.2. And then that it would be very easy to set. And then if you wanted to change your frequency, you just change those two dials, and then you'd have a